Long today because Towel has towel class. But what we will do is roll the intro. What happened to the intro? Hold on.
Hold on. Wait a second. That's it.
That's it?
Yeah, that's the melody of Funky Town.
Well, look at that. Oh, I'm a haircut towel. Look at me. Look at me. I'm a haircut towel. Have you ever said, oh, towel looks better with a haircut? Well, I'm a cute towel, and I got a haircut. It is so good to see you all. Good morning. My name is Grant Smith-Ellis. I'm a towel. Look at that. That's a picture of me on the screen being like, oh, right. Oh, good morning, Nancy and Christina and Nanya. Very good to see you. We have some things to talk about. It seems that there's always things to talk about. Hello! Happy Towel Wednesday indeed, Jay Moore. Seems like there's always things to talk about these days, but what's really been developing in the orbit and from the fallout of Michael Proctor's cell phone extraction, coupled with Marbury v. Madison, Corey A. Hopkins, the business litigator, coupled with Marbury v. Madison's FOIA request related to Commissioner Cox of the Boston PD and Kelly Dever. The fallout of Michael Proctor's Cellphone-Gate. I don't even know how to explain this, okay? The pressure being ramped up, it's almost like desperation, okay? I'm very close to a lot of what's going on. I have a post I want to read that I wrote this morning. 20 towel thoughts about this whole thing. But to begin with, we've talked a lot on this stream, okay, for a long time about how difficult it can be to look at people we thought were doing good things in one situation, whatever the reason may be, and confront that they may have done bad things in another situation, okay? That's in particular true of the cases investigated by Michael Proctor and Brian Tully's Massachusetts State Police Unit detailed to the Norfolk DA. Now, I realize in some sense, okay, there's a way that things work. You're not supposed to ask questions about certain things. You're not supposed to rock the boat too much. But that entrenches a very dangerous form of cover-up, okay? And what I mean by that is it leads to this mentality where people in positions of power, in particular people in the state police or these units detailed to the Norfolk DA as an example. Good morning, Troy. It leads to the potential for horrific abuses of power. And some of what I'm seeing, okay, I think people are starting to put it all together. It does tie back to Brian Tully, to Kate Peter, the PI working for Marty Kraft, and to Jen McCabe a little bit. Okay? And it's scary because you have to wonder, in a democracy, in a representative democracy that relies on constitutional rights to check and balance the behavior of prosecutors and investigators, how did these three people, and Michael Proctor and all these people in their orbit, how did they do this? How did this happen? And if that question is uncomfortable for you, it's perhaps because the way politics operates is that we're incentivized to look the other way. Oh, somebody might be asking questions. Let's call them and try to befriend them so they won't ask the tough questions. Oh, someone won't stop asking tough questions. Let's torment their mom. Let's torment them by proxy. Let's send emails to their children's schools. I see through it. That's another thing I want to talk about today. I've covered government, state government, for years. I don't toot my own horn. I don't go out there doing celebration tours or victory laps. But I have taken on the highest levels of the Democratic establishment in this state, and I'm not afraid to talk about it. Look at my coverage of the CCC, the Cannabis Control Commission in Massachusetts. I was unafraid to take on some of the highest level bureaucratic staffers in this government, in this state government. people who openly smeared me using a governmental promulgation, okay? Because of the tough questions I was asking, specifically about the state treasurer, people in her orbit, etc., etc. The Democratic machine in this state has done some good things. I'm not going to deny it. But it is also a uniparty, unipolar apparatus. And if you're savvy enough, whether you're in the state police or any agency of government, and you know how to navigate that one-party structure, you can really take advantage of it. Now, Towel has... I'm a government-adjacent reporter. I know people everywhere. Okay, so I am very intimately familiar with sort of the proxy tactics used by these apparati. Is that the Latin? Multiple apparatuses? It's like octopus versus octopi. I'm not Gargura. I don't know how to determine whether it's apparati or apparatus. I'm not an etymologist. I'm a towel. Anyway, my point is, these apparatus of government, okay, they have a ebb and flow, all right? They like to look out for their people. It's a lot of overlapping concentric social circles of influence, and it relies on fear. BGG Gruff, it's good to see you. Trolling in the North, what a wonderful username, and I love that little emoji. I'm going to give you a wrench. 3 Clerk Monty, you are a wonderful towel. I agree. Now, part of this is, so I think about politics by analogy, all right? I'm not saying that I don't have my own views on politics, but people are in camps. Since 1796, we have been in camps, whether it was the Democratic Republican Party, the Federalist Party, the Whig Party, the Democrat Party, the Republican Party. We've always been in parties, all right? Even the Bull Moose Party, all right? Damn commies. I'm very upset. Don't even get me started on the fact that there's a freaking communist administration in New York now. I told you all the commies were a threat. You all were like, oh, Grant's just exaggerating. He really doesn't like the commies, if you know from our extensive in-depth series on our research into the rise of the Cold War and the United States fight against communism in the 60s and 70s. I hate the commies. So yes, I was actually reflecting a deep hatred of the Communist Party, but I was also saying you have to understand this is a latent mentality, and they won the friggin' election overnight. Oh, dear God, I told you it was coming. Nobody believed me. They were all like, oh, we don't have communism here. Yes, we do. So much like we are forced to confront the reality of people within our various partisan political camps, with a damn communist coming to prevalence, and it might be hard for us, I hope there's no commies listening, but it might be hard for the various people in the various parties to confront the reality that people who wave a banner of a certain cause might themselves be subject to doing bad things outside of that cause. That's a fundamental tenet of our society. We have to talk today. I'm going to read this post. We're going to watch some videos. Going to talk a little bit. Only until before I have to go to towel class, okay? Because talking with you all makes me feel better. But the way this cover-up, okay, there's a lot of interconnected cases. All right, well, you saw the screen on the intro. We'll talk about it all. But the way this all played out, the way it weaponized the vulnerable, the unheard, looked at their weaknesses as opportunities to keep them quiet. No. March right to Beacon Hill. I'll march right to the Archdiocese of Boston. I'll go all the way to Rome. I'll join the Curia. You don't understand. I'll talk to the auditor, the comptroller. I'll talk to the OIG on the state and federal level. I'll talk to every legislator. You don't understand. You don't do that to people. That's not a personal slight that you did to me. Okay? All right, I'll move on. I don't care. That is an affront to the justice system. And more so than anything else, it's an affront to the most vulnerable. Weaponizing the inner workings of a complex uniparty state that may as well be akin to the hedge maze that is navigating the state house. Okay? Folks, weaponizing one's insider knowledge of that system to exploit the vulnerable or cover up whatever it is that was going on Michael Proctor's cell phone, or to cover up Sandra Birchmore's murder, all of it is a disgrace. It's a disgrace to the profession of law enforcement. It's a disgrace to this system. And let me just tell you, this government, okay, it it does get weaponized at its lower levels, especially the state government. But you know what those people really don't like? When you know their boss's 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 boss. And I think there's a lot of soul searching that's got to be done. All right? I understand this whole apparatus around Proctor and Tully and Kate Peter and Jen McCabe is falling apart. But we got to do some soul searching here. All right? Are we just going to let them continue doing this? No. We have to say what's wrong is wrong, and we have to be willing to confront it. Yes, Tal did get a haircut. So that's why I want to read through the post. I want to talk about some of the developments, and in particular, I know it's early, so people will come in and whatnot, and I might have to get folks caught up midstream. That's okay. But what I want to talk about fundamentally is where I'm coming from with all this, why this is such a threat to the system, and how it all gels together, regardless of one's views on substantive guilt or innocence in any given case of the defendant, the criminal defendant. We have to focus on, in my opinion, how soft power in particular, operates in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We have to focus on it, one, to understand it in form, and two, to understand how in content a small amount of people being in a given room with decision-making power can do some really bad things unless there's people paying attention, using cogent discourse and cutting through the mud, the polemics, the weaponized discourse, to see what's actually going on. And I applaud all of you. If you've been listening to this stream, you're now going to say, oh, wow, that is what he's been talking about with cogent public discourse. It wasn't just a principle. He was telling us that we're building up collectively to a moment of self-reckoning. And we have to have the tools. This is what I was trying to empower you all with. We have to have the tools to be able to decipher in those key moments the developments that are going on. So that's what I want to talk about a little bit this morning. I want to talk a little bit about how that plays into the Karen Reed case, the John O'Keefe case, the Turtle Boy case, the Lindsay Catani case, the Sandra Birchmore case, the Matt Farwell case, the other 17 cases touched by Michael Proctor's cell phone. I want to talk about how this all intermeshes. So I think a good way to do it is this little towel post that I wrote here. All right? And we'll read through it because I'm a little towel. So what really sparked me this morning was I woke up, and it's early in the morning. I didn't really have plans to cover anything today. What is the first thing I see? Jen McCabe is trending on Twitter. All right? And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And it made me realize, all right, people, unless they've been following every development over the last few months, and in particular the last few weeks or days, no one is going to understand how, and I know some of you do, no one is really going to be able to, though, get the full picture of all of this. So I think it's important to actually read through it, understand what's going on, and I did so. I created a post that I think structures it all. Because if you haven't been following Michael Proctor's cell phone extraction, the suspension of Canton PD Sergeant Sean Good, the fate of Brian Tully, the fate of Yuri Buchanan, the developments with Matt Farwell, this former Stoughton cop, the Stoughton PD and the MSP unit that investigated Karen Reed and Turtle Boy also have close connections to the Sandra Birchmore investigation. In fact, John Fanning, Brian Tully's partner of 20 years, did that investigation. Fanning, who was also a former police officer in Stoughton, along with Yuri Buchanan, before Yuri and John Fanning went to the MSP unit working for the Norfolk DA under the direction of Brian Tully. In fact, Yuri Buchanan was a sergeant in that unit. So Tully's a lieutenant, Buchanan's a sergeant, and then detective lieutenant, and then everyone else was working under them, and Fanning and Tully had been partners for 20 years or something at that unit. Now, who do we have here? Good morning, Nanny Doo. It is 8 a.m. where I'm at, so it is early in the morning. And appreciate you joining. What we're talking about today, as I was just talking about, is the interplay between this MSP unit, Michael Proctor's cell phone records starting to come out, Proctor dropping his appeal, the implications of the 17 other criminal cases investigated by the CPAC unit, which, by the way, local cops investigate some things, okay? The state police investigate some things, and then the CPAC unit, in particular, assigned to the Norfolk DA, investigates the worst of the worst, okay? Now, before we dive into this post, let me just bring up the image, all right? This is the image that I put together. Okay, this is the chat. I just have it accessible because I'm a towel, all right? Now, do you see how the chart links a lot of the names I was just talking about, you can put some faces to the names if you want to take a look at the chat. It's a wonderful chat. All right? So, John Fanning, Brian Tully, Michael Morrissey, Matthew Farwell, William Farwell, also a former cop, Robert Devine, former cop, a lot of stuff going on with his post-commission hearing right now. Whether he'll be decertified as a cop. That's a picture of him and Sandra. Sandra, who was recruited horrifically while she was in the Police Explorers program by some of these cops. Then you see Yuri Buchanan used to work in Stoughton. John Fanning used to work in Stoughton. They then joined Brian Tully's MSP unit, who was the unit detailed to Michael Morrissey. This unit investigates the worst of the worst, all right? They don't investigate by numbers as many cases as other units, but these units, the MSP detectives, investigate the worst of the worst, homicide, etc., etc. Now, then you got to think about the John O'Keefe and Karen Reed case with David Yannetti and Karen, Alan Jackson, Dustin Chow, the Public Integrity Unit head, Josh Levy, the former U.S. attorney in Massachusetts, who took over for Rachel Rollins, who herself lost her job was forced out because she was leaking information about non-existent federal probes to interfere in the Suffolk DA race in 2022 between Ricardo Arroyo and Kevin Hayden, okay? And so Josh Levy takes over for Rachel Rollins. Josh Levy is now suing President Trump after President Trump's new administration came in under U.S. Attorney Leah Foley. Josh Levy is suing President Trump on behalf of Harvard. But Josh Levy was overseeing, along with Rachel Rollins, the grand jury that Jessica Leslie was leaking about related to the Karen Reed and John O'Keefe case, the State Police CDL scandal case, and at least 2 other cases we don't know about yet, all right? Then over here, you got the release of Lindsay Gattani's unredacted phone extraction in April of 2024. You got Kate Peter, who's this PI working for this guy named Marty Kraft. Marty Kraft's got connections to Brian Tully and his state police unit and the Norfolk DA. And then you got this guy, Jason Broyles, who we'll come to find out appeared for the first time under his real name in the fall of 2023 to pay for a free Karen Reed billboard, and then disappeared, and then came back in the spring or winter of 2024, right after another operative named Father Mark Murphy, who was using something called the Jennings Report, got exposed for writing these weird hit pieces about Lindsay Gattani that seemed to be at the behest of Kate Peter, which no one could really make sense of at the time. But then Jason reappears under a fake name, pretending to be a woman, and he does the same thing. He picks up where the Jennings Report and Mark Murphy left off after Murphy got exposed, a former Catholic priest, for running that Jennings Report. As soon as that happened, Broyles comes up as Haley. Haley, he calls a social experiment. Haley starts doing the same stuff, I think, for Kate that Mark Murphy was doing. Why would Broyles be doing that? Well, what if he was a mole for Kate, trying to pretend to be pro-Turtle Boy and pro-Karen Reed by specifically focusing attacks on Lindsay Gattani to get credibility with Turtle Boy's inner circle, so that Broyles could then feed intel back to Kate, who was working as a PI for Marty Kraft, who was working with Tully, who was middlemaning the prosecution of Aidan Kearney because Michael Morrissey had recused and assigned a special prosecutor, but in reality, Morrissey was still in charge of the prosecution and talking to both Tully and Kate and Jen McCabe directly. Everybody understand? Oh yeah, it's that interwoven. Now, you got some other people there. Nick Garino was the trooper in the bottom there who processed both Lindsay Gattani's phone extraction before it was leaked by Brian Tully in April of 2024. And by the way, there's got to be some Kate Peter involvement in that leak of Lindsay Gattani's 15-year unredacted phone extraction for this reason. Kate Peter's messages to Lindsay, some of them were removed, okay, from the extraction while it was in MSP custody before Tully leaked the unredacted extraction to Turtle Boy's lawyer in April of 2024. All right? Secondly, there were also messages from Tully to Lindsay removed from that extraction while it was in MSP custody before it was leaked. Okay, so pretty strong indication Tully and Kate had some kind of communication about that extraction, not only removing their messages, but releasing it. And you might be saying to yourself, why would they do this? How would they do this? Where's the prosecutor? Well, Tully personally leaked that phone extraction. He personally hand-delivered it while Ken Mello was in the hospital. And a lot of you have been saying, no, even I heard Broken Baker the other day. He was happy to clarify that unlike Poland, okay, Denmark can into space. All right, that is great news for the Danes. Congratulations. I'm thrilled to hear you have Danish astronauts. This is truly a stunning, crowning achievement for the Danish people. God bless the King of Denmark. I'm an American towel. I'm glad you all have reached space, okay? But even Broken Baker was like, no, you don't understand, Grant. Tully just accidentally removed messages from him and Kate to Lindsay, and then tripped his way all the way down the highway, ended up at an IHOP, and just released the information to Bradel. He was just slipping. He had an accident. It was totally an accident. He just slipped, fell, somehow edited a Celebrite extraction while he was stumbling around, and then got Nick Garino somehow involved in this snowball that took them from the Canton Police Department, from Canton, right, where the Norfolk DA is. They're just stumbling and tripping. The extraction's getting manipulated to protect Tully and Kate. They keep stumbling. They're just a block. They're on, like, the ice roads at this point. They somehow get all the way to Tim Bradel. In person, they're still stumbling, and then I totally see how this could happen. One of them goes to tie their shoe. They stumble over the other one. They just fall, and then the extraction, with only the stuff from Lindsay to Kate and from Tully to Lindsay removed, just goes into Tim Bradel's hand. You see what I'm saying? Total accident. You can entirely see how these series of events, as a result of this snowball and icy roads and tripping over each other while tying their shoes, could lead to them leaking Lindsay Catani's unredacted cell phone extraction. Baker, I totally see where you're coming from. I just don't think that's very rational, all right? As much as I'm willing to entertain the possibility that Brian Tully tripped, somehow drove 40 miles, and while on the way, Nick Garino and him were, like, slipping on ice and edited the extraction, at which point they fell over when they arrived at Tim Bradel's precise location and it just flew into his hands. I'm willing to entertain that. The laws of physics, I suppose, say it's technically possible, although I'm not really sure about that. I think you need some kind of angular momentum to actually get to Tim Bradel's location, and I don't believe that they were just rolling there on ice, all right? I think it was... I just don't... It's kind of like that Eminem song, you know? You don't just trip and fall and end up in that situation. That's ludicrous. Good morning, Deep Sleep Meditation. If you just came in right now, you might be a little baffled. That's okay. I want to entertain all possibilities, all right? I want us all to be on the same page. Yes, as 3 Clerk Monty said, under Newton's laws of physics, there is at least a 0.00001% chance that what I just described is how Lindsay Catani's phone extraction got leaked, all right? So, but I think in the interest of fairness, and there's no ice on the roads in April in Massachusetts, as far as I know, I don't think Brian Tully tripped, and I don't think that's what led to him leaking Lindsay Catani's phone extraction. And furthermore, even if somehow he was so physically clumsy that Tim Bradel was standing in the office and he tripped and just flung it at him, that doesn't explain how Nick Garino was involved and why the extraction was manipulated to remove messages from Tully to Lindsay and from Kate to Lindsay. All right, even the, tripped, fell, and it just landed in Tim Bradel's lap theory can't explain that. All right, yes, absolutely, absolutely, folks. I'm willing to dive deep into a Newtonian analysis. I'm telling you, when Newton was writing his Tractatus, when he was writing his theory of the laws of physics, this is what he was thinking about. He was thinking, I have to write laws that will help people understand whether Brian Tully tripped, fell, and landed on Tim Bradel with Lindsay Catani's cell phone extraction. You can call me Isaac Towell Newton. Okay, now, but there's a video that contravenes this theory, okay? I'm thrilled we're all on the same page about this, but there's a video we have to watch, all right? Now, you might be saying, oh, dear God, Grant, did Ken Mello really get up in court and tell the world that Brian Tully released it intentionally? Yes. Yes, Ken Mello did that. Yes, we are going to watch the moment. And you might be saying, Grant, I thought you were going to read a post. I am going to read a post. I'm just pontificating a little bit, you know what I'm saying? I'm a little towel. All right, I think Lindsay posted this recently. I remember watching the clip. Let me go into Lindsay Towell's feed. She can be a towel. I think we all agree that Lindsay is a towel. Actually, let's take a vote. Okay, hold on. We're going to take a vote. We are going to take a vote. It's a very important vote. Is Lindsay Catani an honorary towel because she held the powerful accountable? Okay, so you're only going to have a certain number of options. You're only going to have 2 options. 1, yes, Lindsay is one. Yes, Lindsay is a hero. Or 2, no, I love communists. All right, so you can vote against Lindsay, but you're going to have to declare yourself a communist. if you want to do that, listen, I'm just saying, clearly a lot of people in New York are commies, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm not really sure we have a lot of commies in the chat. So if you want to vote against Lindsay, you got to declare yourself a commie. That is what we call a push poll. All right, where's this video? I got it! Lindsay had the video up and ready. You know why? Because she's an erudite, cogent, and wonderful little towel. All right. I found it on Lindsay's. One sec. Not yet. Hold on. I got to take down the chat. Okay. Everybody ready? Let's do it.
In that regard, there's huge amounts of information. Rather than not provide something and have Mr. Braille say, this was withheld from me, and this is potentially exculpatory, it was our decision to give him everything we had. We don't know what we may use at time of trial, what we may not use. But it's there, Your Honor. And, I can't say why we didn't, obviously the reason we didn't reduce that is because we don't know what we have and what Mr. Braille may feel is germane and not germane. So that's why he received the large volume he did. Obviously, we're not trying to withhold anything, Your Honor. In fact, when I was hospitalized, I was getting emails and requests for this. And a colleague of mine who did appear on my behalf on one day responded with a discovery package that he believed met Mr. Brady's request. Subsequent to that, we provided him with numerous discovery documents, and when I'm having a difficult time with judges, Mr. Brady saying we've gotten thousands of photographs or whatever else that don't come like, well, if we didn't provide these materials, Your Honor, and we have the same issue where we have just tremendous amounts of material to go through, and this will also be the subject of me come before Your Honor for some.
Yep. So point proven. I think the laws of physics say that Brian Tully did not trip and fall and accidentally release Lindsay Gattani's phone extraction, and he did it on purpose because there wasn't as much oversight because Ken Mello was in the hospital. But yeah, and then also to answer Bossy Texas Chick's question, I don't think Michael Proctor using bad words is the moral issue here. There's a lot of issues. One, you've got to be willing to confront that this unit, Brian Tully's unit, released Lindsay Gattani's cell phone extraction as a distraction to help their friends Jen McCabe and Kate Peter. Second of all, okay, because nothing would take public attention off Jen and Kate, specifically Jen. That was the one they were really trying to help in April of 2024. Okay, number two. Michael Proctor, it's not about using the bad words. We've talked about this before, I think, Bossy Texas Chick. It's procedural due process. You have a right under the Sixth Amendment. I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. You have a right to confront your accuser. If there's prejudicial information, like say Proctor called the defendant like a racial slur, you have a right to confront him. Doesn't mean you're innocent, but if you're deprived the right to confront him, that's the serious issue here. All right, so I want folks to understand that. The third thing is, you all, and we'll watch the video, I think you all should understand, I think they set Proctor up. Okay? It wasn't that Proctor set Karen up, or Tully set Aiden up. No. What happened with Aiden Kearney, we can watch a video on that, but it wasn't that there was a setup. I'm going to show you, actually. Oh, no, I disappeared. I'm going to show you this video, all right? Because I think this video will help explain this to some of you. I put together a nice video, and it does a really good job. But first, let's talk about whether what happened to Aiden Kearney was a setup. I think the word setup misinterprets a bump, okay? A bump is not a setup. A bump is a psychological operation designed to destabilize a target and, like Donna Adelson, get them to give up something that they weren't otherwise going to give up. That is not entrapment. That is a bump, all right? So I want to watch this little video here, all right? It's a good video. I think it does a good job kind of highlighting what I'm trying to say right now. And it's short, and that's what we're going to talk about first, all right? Then we will talk about the Michael Proctor cell phone situation and why it's not about what the words he used. No one is saying that Michael Proctor using a bad word is the reason why the fallout from this is apoplectic. It's bad because under the rules, under the Constitution of the United States of America, you cannot do these type of things. If you use words like that about a defendant, I suppose, if you disclose it, it's just an ethical violation. If you use words like that about a defendant and hide them from the discovery process, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh my god, that's obstruction. That's a violation of due process. Like I said, do not pass go, do not collect $200. That's why we really have to dive into it. Let's analyze two things. One, why in my opinion, what happened to Aiden Kearney was not a setup, it was a bump, all right? No one set him up. Lindsay Gattani was used as an unwitting honeypot because Kate Peter and her PI friends and Brian Tully psychologically profiled Aiden and then used what they thought would be his weaknesses to wind him up and see how he would react. That's why Karen Reed told him not to go over there on December 23rd, 2023 is my guess because she knows what these tactics look like. She's a very savvy operator. Hello, Nurse 60. God bless you, my dear friend. Thank you for your prayers. I wonder if someone has been working with Tully and crew since 2022, a year before FKR to leak out SB story, as unfortunate as that is. 22 Explorer, she nailed it. Kraft was, I think, hired by Tully initially about Birchmore to keep the cover-up quiet. Bossy Texas chick said, yes, until we have actual RoboCops, I just think that with the stress they are dealing with, the standards are ridiculously high. Yeah, that's a fair opinion. I don't think anyone's going to say that you're 100% in the wrong for that opinion. I think there's some merit to that, Bossy Texas chick. I am deferential to law enforcement, but have you ever heard in the sense that they go after bad people, that the good stuff they do doesn't always get covered, but they really do go after bad people. But my question to you, Bossy Texas chick, is doesn't the president's wife have to be above reproach, figuratively, allegorically, analogously, or otherwise? Doesn't the president's wife have to be above reproach? And why we're talking about this is the 14th Amendment, the Due Process Clause, the 6th Amendment right to confront your accuser, a fair trial. You can be guilty, and if the police officers don't live up to their burdens under the 14th Amendment, the 4th Amendment, the 6th Amendment, whatever it may be, you're going to see that conviction thrown out. If you have a guilty person that you know is guilty, and you're like, well, let's just bring him in and torture him, that's an 8th Amendment violation. You don't see it very often, but you don't think that plays into whether any statements you obtain from that interrogation are going to be thrown out, even if they killed someone on camera? Yeah, because you can't torture people. Now, they didn't actually torture anyone here, as far as I'm aware, although you could argue that what was done to a lot of these people in the orbit of the Birchmore cover-up was emotional torture. What was done to Ida Lee, to Lindsay, anyone who got close to this unit but wouldn't play ball with them, I think got tormented by the system. You know what I'm saying? And very few of these people had the connections to be like, oh, who do you work for? Like, the people they would use to target them. Who do you work for? All right, who's your boss's boss's boss? All right, let's find out. Who are you licensed by? Oh, let's find out. You know, so that's what it takes to stop these people, because they have really entrenched connections. But that's what I kind of want to lay out. With great power comes great responsibility. And at a bare minimum, forget about a local cop. They can have some time to learn. You want to be a state trooper in a paramilitary intelligence gathering organization, you better learn every single rule about evidence. Every single rule. Because if you mishandle evidence, if you play favorites, if you say derogatory things, you play loose and fast with the rules, who suffers? Not just you, but the Commonwealth, the victims, the vulnerable. We need systemic reform in the name of holding guilty people accountable. That's what I'm saying. You want to, Karen Reed or whoever, Turtle Boy, whatever, you can't even get to the merits of whether they're guilty or innocent if you screw up the process. And that's what I'm upset about. Bossy Texas chick, it's an elected position in Massachusetts, the DA. My Bossy Texas chick says, I just find it so hard to believe if there was evidence that Morrissey was that bad, wouldn't he have been booted out of that office? Yeah, his approval rating is 4%. Hello, Bossy Texas chick and Bella, by the way. Hi, Bella. Michael Morrissey's approval rate is 4%. He's next up for election in November of 2026. He's not getting reelected. I don't even think he's going to run. Look at his campaign account. It's got nothing in it. He's not running. He's done. He is out of that office because of a lot of this stuff. But I really want to narrow in. Bossy Texas chick, you are always welcome here. I love engaging with your perspectives. But I want to narrow in, just setting aside what a setup is. I want to narrow in on tactics, okay, police tactics. Now listen to this video from a former FBI agent in San Diego and now a CIA contracting officer. It's short, 47 seconds or so. Tell me if any of this sounds familiar.
You can kind of put anyone in jail if you know what to do. How? You set them up. You create the situation to where they have no choice but to act on their impulse. And once they act on that impulse, then we call that entrapment. We call it a nudge.
A nudge.
A nudge. Sometimes you just gotta give them a quick look, just to see what happens, right?
And how does that happen?
You put a post out there, or you have someone fake profile say something that triggers, that we know is going to trigger them, right? Like, we already know your history. If we're to that point, we already know everything about it. So we're like, oh, this will piss them off. Sometimes you light the fuse and just wait for it to follow. Nothing like putting out a fake social media thing to like really get people mad. Post fake news. Sometimes it's not fake. It's embellished a little bit.
I'm telling you, Kate Peter, Brian Tully's tactics down to a T. And that's what I'm saying. I think what we're going to find is, at the end of this all, a lot of us are going to be left saying, we were tricked. Like, those of us who were really supportive of the prosecution's case and the Karen Reed case, we were tricked. If we had been told this stuff about Proctor from the beginning, would we have supported them? Yeah, but it would have been conditional. Like, yeah, they went after Reed, but these guys are bad news. All right. A lot of us, I think that's why Kate Peter was involved in this. It was to keep anyone who got close to this on the prosecution side from talking negatively about this unit. And now it's all collapsed. And we'll talk a little bit. I have a video here that explains, especially for Bossy Texas Chicks questions, which I do like. I appreciate them. But yes, I'll show. So the proof of corruption. Here's the proof. The proof is in the document filed by the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office in September of 2025 or October of 2025, and then a second document filed a few weeks later. Okay, Bossy Texas Chick, it details specifically in the filings to Judge Krupp in the Miles King et al. Cases. There's like 17 cases now touched by this. That Proctor lied to the court about the fact that his cell phone, he got a new cell phone in 2024, which caused his old phone to be inaccessible, and then his new phone had an auto-delete feature. Actually, it came out in the Norfolk DA documents that Proctor had all of those records and was withholding them from at least 17 different criminal defendants, okay? That is why it's proof of corruption. Again, we're talking, when you're Michael Morrissey, you are in charge of the CPAC unit. Brian Tully is the commander, but it all goes up the chain. This unit was doing a lot of bad stuff, and the prosecutors who work with the police bear the burden now of unringing the bell, which means if there were procedural due process violations, that's proof of corruption. It's the worst thing you can possibly do. That's not even talking about the Sandra Birchmore cover-up or the release of Lindsay's phone. We all have to have a moral reckoning that these people, this unit, was doing very bad things, and that's where this is coming from. It's frustrating. It's listen, we have a. I'll never forget. I was covering a case in Judge Woodlock's courtroom, the federal judge. It was the former Fall River mayor, Giselle Correa, to respond to Nurse 60 saying, "What about misinformed podcast power?" I'll never forget. Judge Woodlock, who, by the way, designed the Moakley Courthouse. He was the head of the panel that designed the Moakley Courthouse in Boston, which is like a gem of the federal court system, folks. Judge Woodlock is like a very esteemed justice. And he's presiding over Giselle Correa's trial, and Lil Towel's doing the verbatim transcript thing on X. I was covering the trial for multiple days. That was the first time I ever covered a full federal trial. And at one point, the defense lawyer or something stands up and says, they must have had a sidebar or something, or some off-the-record discussion in chambers. Judge Woodlock comes out and says, and, I understand that the parties may have some complaints about the media coverage of this case and how what is said in the courtroom is being relayed to the outside world. But, said Judge Woodlock, that is a matter for them, not for us. Moving on. Now, in that moment, I was like, oh, dear God, he's going to call me in. I'm going to get yelled at by Judge Woodlock. But nope. He said, that's a matter for them, not for us. And what that means is, you're the consumers of information. I'm a consumer of information. I also happen to produce content. You vote with your eyes, with your ears, with your consciousness. If you are consuming content, you are facilitating its existence. So it's a reciprocal relationship. And there will always be people in the public sphere voicing their opinion. No one is in a democracy going to go around. You do not want this. You do not want a totalitarian ministry of truth telling people what they can and can't say. You vote with your ears. You vote with your consciousness. You vote with your sentience. You vote with your cognition. You vote with your discourse. If you are out there consuming vacuous content and relaying it or repeating it, that's the problem. But if you're looking at that vacuous content as but a distraction from cogent discourse and instead negating it by raising your own voice in an authentic way about the issues that the propaganda is trying to manipulate you about, you've become part of the solution. And so that's how I think about that. It's a very good question, Nurse 60. But that's how I think about it. Oh, God bless you, Bossy Texas Chicken Bella. Thank you so much for your support. But yes, I think it's absolutely a crucial part of understanding all this. Now let's play the Michael Proctor video. All right, I want to play the Michael Proctor video because it has what I think is a really good explication of all of this and why it's not about necessarily what Michael Proctor said in any given case. It's about what him and Sean Good and Tully and whoever else, Yuri and whatnot, whoever was on that chain, it's about what they were talking about. All right, so let me just find it right now. And by the way, it was Brian Tully's supervisor, who we don't know who it is, Michael Proctor's supervisor, who authorized him to turn off his GPS. I wonder if that was Buchanan or Yuri, Buchanan or Tully. But this is what I want to watch here. I want to watch the video that I put together about Proctor. All right, it's called A Conspiracy of Silence. Oh, here was a vote about who's the next police officer to go down as a result of the content of Michael Proctor's Cellphone-Gate. Brian Tully barely edging out Yuri Buchanan, 39.3 to 37.9. Michael Lang from the Canton PD coming in at 16.4, and John Fanning at 6.4%. But yeah, so this Michael Proctor video, I forget exactly when I posted it. I thought I posted it more recently than this. I guess I posted it last week. Was it really last week? No way, I don't believe that. I don't believe it. All right, give me 1 second. I'm going to find the Michael Proctor video. It was a really good video. Oh, no. Where did I go? I'm back. It's a really good video, so I am going to play it before I read my post, and we're only going for another hour. So today I found it. Literally right as I clicked away, I found it. That is what you call Towel's Law. All right, let's see if I can expand this for
cell
you all.
phone. And
right,
then
1 second. Here we go. Let's watch it. 6 minutes. Come on now. Doesn't want to cooperate. Hold on.
all right, let's dive into a story that starts with a really simple question about a single state trooper's cell phone, and then spirals into a wild web of high-tech surveillance, alleged corruption, and a brilliant federal strategy you have probably never heard of. So this is the big question, right? In the middle of a massive Karen Reed murder case, you have state trooper Michael Proctor. He goes from insisting his phone records were gone forever to suddenly handing over everything. How on earth does that happen? Well, the answer might be hiding in some seriously powerful federal tech that most of us have no clue even exists. Okay, so let's set the scene. You've got Michael Proctor. He's the lead investigator in this huge case. And his first story was simple, defiant even. Phone data's gone, it auto-deletes, nothing to see here, folks. But yeah, that story was about to completely unravel. And I mean, things change fast. Just look at this. First, he's saying, nope, data's gone. Then his own lawyer bails, telling the court, hey, my client made me lie. I mean, that's a massive, massive red flag. And then boom. Suddenly, Proctor comes up with a complete copy of 12 years of his phone data. Something or someone clearly backed him into a corner. Yeah, this reversal just doesn't make any sense on its own, right? It practically screams, I got caught. But the question is, how? To figure that out, we have to look way beyond the kind of tech you and I know about and step into the very secretive world of federal surveillance. And that brings us to this idea, this capability that sounds like something straight out of a spy movie. It's called the invisible clone. The theory goes that federal agents can make a perfect copy of someone's phone without ever laying a finger on it. You know, most of us think that the tech the government uses is kind of like the stuff we can buy, just a bit better. That is a huge mistake. We're picturing someone needing to plug in a cable or do some super complicated hack, but the reality is federal capabilities are light years ahead of that. So, how do they pull this off? Well, one of the key pieces of tech is something called a stingray. You can also call it a spoof cell tower. Basically, it's a fake cell tower that tricks your phone into connecting to it instead of a real one. And once you're connected, they can see the data flowing right through. So here's the supposed playbook. First, the feds get a warrant. This is all above board. Then, an agent just needs to get near the target. They could be in a crowd, at a coffee shop, doesn't matter. They use a small pocket-sized device, and within minutes, they've created a perfect digital twin of the phone's entire hard drive. No wires, no pop-up alerts, just a complete copy, and the target has no idea.
Okay, but here's where it gets really, really smart. This tech isn't just about finding old evidence of a crime that's already happened. No, it's about setting a trap for a new crime, obstruction of justice.
And you really have to get this part. It's not about what's on the phone. Not really. It's about what you hide from it. The feds aren't just looking for that one smoking gun text. They're creating a perfect, time-stamped copy of the entire phone to use as a baseline. The real trap gets sprung later.
So here's how the trap works. Step 1, the feds secretly clone the phone. Step 2, they just wait. They let the state investigation do its thing. Then, when the target, say Michael Proctor, or another person in this case, Jen McCabe, is officially ordered to turn over their phone data, the feds take that data and compare it to the secret copy they made. Any deleted texts, any hidden files, it's instantly obvious. And that lie, that act of hiding evidence, becomes a brand new, clean, and super easy to prove federal crime, obstruction of justice. Okay.
All right, let's go back a little bit. This is a message from Aidan Kearney to Lindsay Gattani in November of 2023. Okay? Let's take a look at these messages. All right? Now, Aidan initially starts off the conversation by saying he found out some information on the way home about the feds that he will not be making public. And Lindsay asks, is it good or bad? And then here Aidan also says, questions been asked. Then Lindsay says, really, good or bad? And Aidan says back this. And let's zoom in on it, okay? Let's zoom in. There we go. Yes, they, the feds, requested a conference call over the weekend. Josh Levy himself, asking questions like, quote, is there any chance the trial date could be delayed? This was Karen's first trial. Only one reason to ask that. They were asking for all communications with the DA office, asking for Jen McCabe's cell phone records to be sent to them as soon as they get them. Keep in mind, this is the operative part, the feds likely have Jen's phone records already, so they may want to see them because they suspect whoever hands them over to the defense will delete things that won't match up with their records. Oh! So they waited till Proctor denied having any of these records for the other 17 cases, and then the feds dropped it on him, and then he was forced to reveal he lied. It's almost like those messages Jen McCabe had to Allie McCabe and KF that weren't in her extraction that suddenly appeared in discovery. I wonder what the feds have. You don't need a Title III or whatever it's called, wiretap, to get this stuff. You can clone a phone. I'm telling you, if they have a warrant, they can clone your phone. And so that's why I think it's not... Oh, and Bossy Texas Chick, you also got to remember, there may be a point in all this when it comes out that, yeah, they did cover up Sandra Birchmore's murder. So, I mean, it's not just language. It's very possible that they tried to help their buddies or whoever had liability and they covered up a murder. Sandra Birchmore's murder. If that's the case, I mean, who is going to stand in this chat and be like, yeah, well, you know, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. No! There is no excusing it. Like, there's no excusing what happened to Lindsay's phone. And if you can't think about that, if it's tough to even process, all right, well, this is going to be a really tough few years. Like, what are you going to, not you, Bossy Texas Chick, but what are you going to do, these people who were, like, really close to Kate Peter or Proctor or any of this, like, weird, like, very cultish network, like, where you can never criticize Jen McCabe, can never criticize Tully. What do you think these people are going to do? Like, do you know what the documentaries are going to be about now? Even Netflix, come on, what are they going to do? They still want my footage. I won't give it to them if Kate's involved. Those are my terms. Hey, it's my footage. I own the copyright. I can make whatever demands I want. You either take it or you don't. I don't care. It's my footage. Anyway, the point is, What do you think the Netflix documentary is going to be about now? These people as heroes? Are you out of your mind? No, it's going to be about how Proctor's unit screwed up what was otherwise probably a good case against Karen. It's going to be about how they screwed up all these other cases, and fundamentally, the only thing you can do now is make it about Birchmore. The story is Sandra Birchmore. What happened to Lindsay Gattani is important. It should be in there. At the hands of a lot of different people. In particular, Brian Tully and his unit, and Kate Peter, and Jen McCabe, who told Lindsay she needed to be sorry. Right in the beginning of this, which is creepy. Listen, I don't have any voodoo dolls, bro. I don't know what to tell you. I have a fluffy little Pete Bunny towel, but he's not a voodoo doll. Nobody's sticking any pins in Pete Bunny towel. Oh, God, he's going to get all angry now. Nobody's going to get you, buddy. He's napping over there in his Pete Bunny towel corner. I put him on a little chair with a blankie. It's adorable. He's a Pete Bunny towel. Anyway, my point is, there's something deeply, deeply, deeply disturbing about the Sandra Birchmore case. I think that's going to be the hardest for people to reckon with. There's something deeply, deeply disturbing with what was done to Lindsay Gattani, with what was done to a lot of these people in the orbit of these cases. Speaking of Lindsay Gattani, all right, we've concluded our poll, and Lindsay Gattani has been voted as a hero. And some of you said you were communist. No, I think what happened is Lindsay's always been speaking the truth. And it was Kate Peter and Brian Tully using Lindsay as an unwitting honeypot to get Turtle Boy to be backed into a corner, so Turtle Boy would have to flip on Karen Reed so they could get Karen Reed on a fallback charge if she didn't get convicted for John's death. That's what I think how they were moving. And I think, obviously, Lindsay did not want Kate and Tully to release her entire phone extraction to help Jen McCabe. This is why it was kind of this, like, Lindsay was getting it from both sides because no one could see that she wasn't helping Kate and Tully, like, do this. It wasn't a setup. She was being manipulated by them as an unwitting honeypot. And she's always just been telling the truth. But that doesn't mean that the people behind the scenes were letting her know she was a honeypot. No, they used her and they discarded her because she's not a Jen McCabe in their eyes. She doesn't come from money. She's just a working class single mom. And that's why I'm so upset about this. You don't treat people like Ida Lee or Lindsay or Sandra Birchmore or whatever as less than because they didn't grow up in Canton or because they don't have millions or because they didn't know Brian Tully or they don't know Kate Peter or whatever. You don't do that. You don't treat them as less than. Not to mention how some of these vulnerable people were treated in terms of like being weaponized, being silenced, being tormented. That's why. Give me the slings and arrows. I'll take it. Like, no matter what happens, I'll be able to come on here, whether it's the Karen Reed people, the Turtle Boy people, the people who just care that someone authentically voices their perspective. I'll say, these people are tormenting me. Towel needs help. Let's do it. And people will do it. And that's how it should have been this whole time. It shouldn't have been Brian Tully's unit with Kate Peter versus Turtle Boy and Karen Reed. It should have been us all collectively against the corruption of the justice system that occurred at the expense of the most vulnerable, regardless as to what side people were on, regardless even as to the merit in some cases or substance of someone's guilt or innocence. We should have all been collectively talking about this. It got way out of control. Some of us were manipulated. Some of us were, I'm sure, complacent. Some of us were just willing to turn a blind eye, and all of us are responsible. The murder of that young girl and her 8 to 10 week old baby boy, the murder of that young girl is not something you look at as, oh, well, you know, it happened. You know, boys will be boys. No, it's a shocking, shocking abuse of trust. And the fact they abused her when she was a child. They were cops. There might have been a brothel. It's wrong. It's wrong. It's not just excusable misconduct. It's a fundamental threat to the integrity of this system. It's the most abhorrent, grotesque, moral reckoning I can imagine. It is the worst, hands down, just the Birchmore part of this and the cover-up is the worst thing that has ever happened in the history of this state. Nothing has ever been this bad. You could comb the record books. You will never find anything as bad as what happened to that girl from when she was recruited out of the Police Explorers program as a child to when she was groomed, abused, and then eventually killed. No, it's not acceptable. It's wrong. It is wrong in every sense of the term. We're going to start there. We're going to start there. Once we are there, and we can all say that, then we'll move to Lindsay Gattani and the release of the phone extraction. That was wrong. And if they shared her intimate photos and Proctor had it on his phone, they all should go down for it federally. That was wrong. It was a moral wrong. And it was done by people in positions of public trust. Likewise, if Kate Peter's been the mastermind behind a lot of this, the emails to people's schools, interfering in their lives, trying to sabotage Towel Mom. You're going to take Towel Mom's retirement away? You're going to try to make me not want to support Towel Mom? No, I'm going to support Towel Mom no matter what, Kate Peter. Jen McCabe and her, they all think they're so smart. They're just little trolls. I don't care where your people are. I'll go to their boss's boss. I'll go to the Pope. I'm not kidding. I probably could talk to at least someone in the Curia if I wanted to. We're not there yet, though. But you absolutely can be damn sure that half the legislature knows about this. You can be damn sure that like half the agencies in state government know about this. You can be sure. I don't know who else I called. I don't know who else called me. I don't even know what you're looking at me sideways for. What would I have anything to smirk about? Little old me. I'm clearly just a towel. It's best to underestimate me. That's how we should approach this. Clearly. JI5, have you ever wondered if maybe the reason that the ME said that after the MSP had all this evidence, the MSP who's supposed to present evidence to the ME before she renders her finding, you ever wonder if she was either coerced or maybe manipulated? And have you ever wondered if maybe the ME sandbagged the autopsy of John O'Keefe to punish the MSP unit for doing that? And you ever wonder if maybe, just maybe, the medical examiner got a visit by the FBI and the U.S. Attorney about all this? In particular, because Ted Daniel leaked the visitor's log that shows the FBI visiting the ME, Irene Scadorti-Bello. Yes, indeed, folks. This is a moral reckoning. And part of the reason why I want to take you all through it is I don't think it's fair to those of you who supported the prosecution in the John O'Keefe and Karen Reed case. I don't think it's fair you should just have to be left alone with your thoughts as this all plays out. That's horrifying. Like, you watch all these people, like, abandon ship. You watch the Carrie Lamas of the world and the Tuesday Gazettes and all these other people. They're just going to flee this ship because Kate Peters' ship went down in flames. All right? You're going to see it happen. They're going to abandon Michael Proctor. They're going to abandon Tully. They're going to just abandon these people. And I don't think it's right that those of us, whether you were manipulated, whether you really feel genuinely that it's so important that Karen Reed was prosecuted, that everything is excusable, I don't think it's right that you should all have to be left to your own thoughts as this plays out. It's going to be horrifying. It's going to be uncomfortable. And I think we should talk through it. That's the only way anything positive has ever happened. People have been able to talk through it, see through the propaganda, and hopefully structure or engineer structural reforms that ward this off from ever happening again. That's why I want to keep reiterating it. Anyone, whoever they may be, who can't get out of that loop where, like, okay, they were investigating Karen Reed, so everything else they did was okay. They were investigating Karen Reed, so it doesn't matter. We have to break that. That's the spell. You were conditioned. Whether it was through the presentation of evidence, whether it was through social proximity, whether it was through narrative control, whether it was through emotional connection, you were put into this feedback loop to avoid these people ever being held accountable. It was a propaganda operation to insulate that unit from accountability for Birchmore or Lindsay or Ida Lee or anyone else. That's all it was. I know, and that's the reality, Bossy Texas Chick. We're finally at the point Whereas a Kate Peter or a Brian Tully or a Michael Proctor, you can't just hide among the chaos. You can't just use PR to avoid accountability. It's not going to happen. And that's, again, folks, I don't always know, I know you have heard this spiel before, Bossy Texas Chick. I don't know if people fully understand what public relations is as a discipline. It emerged because Sigmund Freud's nephew weaponized, his name was Edward Bernays. Edward Bernays, his uncle Freud was like a poor psychologist in Austria who had a coke habit and like had no money. So Edward Bernays was like a business guy, and he went over to America and he was like, I'm going to sell Uncle Sigmund's ideas to the world. Okay, the first thing he ever did was go to the cigarette company. Actually, he started as a government agent in World War I for the War Propaganda Board. A very interesting time in the nation's history. But that's not, I don't care as much about that. You want to fight the damn commies? I'm all about it. And what I care about is that his first commercial utilization of Uncle Sigmund's mass psychology of mind was specifically in the context of a social movement. Women up until like the 1920s, it was very unsociable for them to touch cigarettes, not to mention smoke them. That's why in the old pictures, it wasn't fashion that you saw them having gloves on and a long plastic straw as a filter. No, bro, they could not touch the cigarette because it was considered very like grotesque. It was, you may as well have been naked in public. It was really bad. You were basically like the lowest rung of society if as a woman you touched a cigarette. I don't know why that was the moral standard. It makes no sense to me. The point is that's the reality the cigarette companies were facing. Well, this genius man, he was genius, but it's very insidious. He's like a Kate Peter. He goes to the cigarette companies, like I think Kate Peter went to Jen McCabe, and he's like, you've got a problem, all right? You've got a problem. Half this country can't smoke because it's socially unacceptable. But look, there's this feminist movement rising right now. The flappers. What if we send them down the Easter parade in 29 with cigarettes, old-timey cigarettes, and have them holding them? They can call them their torches of freedom. Oh, yes, that'll liberate the women. But really, it was about selling more cigarettes for the death machine. I shouldn't say that. I'm trying to quit cigars. The point is, the very foundation of corporate propaganda, which is what we're dealing with, even though it sounds like it's state-sponsored with Kate and Brian Tully's unit and Marty Kraft's PI firm. No, it's corporate propaganda tactics. It's not like war propaganda. It's a very rudimentary form of it. If it were state level, it's different. It's a state actor using rudimentary corporate tactics. But I think Kate Peter went to Jen McCabe the same way. It was like, listen, bro, people are going to just keep paying attention to you, keep paying attention to you. The only way we can do anything about it is by using our connection to Brian Tully and our favoritism with Michael Morrissey and making Lindsay a distraction. That's why I think it's very obvious that this unit was willing to play dirty. The Birchmore thing shows they were willing to play dirty, and the release of Lindsay's phone brings it to another level. Now, let me show you the chart. All right, I did some analysis of Google Trends, and you might be saying, oh my God, Grant. Like, why? Well, because that's the only way to actually prove this. I know it happened, in my opinion, because I lived it. I saw this stuff going down. It impacted people I care about very deeply. And I didn't like anything that I saw. So I put together this little chat. All right, it's a chat. Now, what it does is it traces the Google Trends of mentions of Lindsay's name and Jen McCabe's name over time. And then it narrows in on spikes at specific points in order to make a point. Now, what you're going to notice is like all Kate's people recently have been going at Lindsay. Like the Julie Carpenters, whatever. Like these fake accounts that, oh no, I hit myself. These fake accounts that like are in Kate's Discord. They're all going hard at Lindsay because she's a convenient distraction, right? But look at this chart, all right? You see that first little black circle there on the left? Well, the first bump is December of 2023 when Lindsay comes on the scene, all right? She gets so much attention on the Google Trends, it spikes to 100, okay? That's where I think Tully and them get the idea. Now, look at this second bump here, all right? The first one that's circled in black on the left. That is when Tully leaks Lindsay's phone, right at the start of the first Karen Reed and John O'Keefe trial. You see those bumps? Well, what happened if we look at the corresponding timeline for Jen McCabe's Google results? She had, by the way, she was freaking out over nothing. I'm sorry, I know it was hard for her to be the focus, but bro, look at this chart from early 2023. Come on, at its worst, she was barely registering in the beginning. Lindsay immediately out the gate was 100 times more relevant than Jen McCabe in terms of the analytics. Again, this is just analytics. It's not an opinion. You cannot manipulate this. This is what people were searching for on Google. It's a preserved historical record. Even at Jen McCabe's worst here on the right in the very beginning, it's not circled. She was barely getting any attention. Okay, it wasn't that bad. I'm sorry, it might have been bad regionally, but your PR firm, whatever the hell they're called, they should have told you, bro, it's not that bad. We don't need to over-respond. We're going to Streisand effect this if you over-respond. Streisand effect is where Barbara Streisand in 93 tried to get pictures of her home taken off the internet, and that just led to more people looking at pictures of Barbara Streisand's home. So now if you go to the Wikipedia article on the Streisand effect, it's a picture of her home. 40 years later, 30 years later, it's freaking hilarious. Anyway, what's not hilarious is that Jen McCabe, and I think Kate Peter and Brian Tully, didn't want Jen to be the focus of a lot of public attention at the start of the second Karen Reed trial in April of 2024. So what happens exactly when Jen's about to take the stand? Oh, look at that. The phone extraction gets leaked. And then Jason Broyles, close to Kate, I think, been in Kate's Discord since 2019, although I have reason to believe he's probably a predator hunter or something, but I think he's in my opinion, he kind of preys on people by lying about being a victim's advocate because he really is just an intel operative, a low-level PI. And I think he uses predator hunting, as do a lot of Kate's people, as cover to, do whatever they're going to do, all right? But anyway, I think he knew some of Kate's other people prior to 2019. That's what I have reason to believe. I got a lot of friends. I don't know. Anyway, so Jason Broyles, I think, at least in 2019, was in Kate's Discord. And so I think that's why Kate was like, oh yeah, we'll just have Broyles show up as Haley. We'll have him cover it. That'll take some heat off Jen. Remember, nothing else was working. The DA putting out a statement didn't work. A special prosecutor didn't work. Charging Aidan Kearney didn't work. The RO with Lindsay got amended right before that so Aidan could attend hearings. Aidan was out of jail after doing the 60-day bid. They chewed Lindsay up and they spit her out. And the reason is shown in the analytics. Okay, cut through all the noise, look at the data. The data shows that Lindsay was the distraction. Now, it's even more interesting because at the second Karen Reed trial, they do it again. They make Lindsay the target of public attention again to try to take some of the heat off Jen, but it doesn't work during the second trial. Jen's really narrowed in on. All right, but look at the timing. A state police unit and a prosecution office as their personal sort of arm of enforcement. Does that mean that the underlying charges reflect guilt or innocence of the defendant? No, it doesn't impact that at all. It's a procedural due process question. So, and that's why this data is so important, because it shows, in my opinion, it's a preserved historical record of the motive. It really shines light. We know the who, we know the what, we know the when, we know the where. Okay? Brian Tully, Kate Peter, Jen McCabe, release of Lindsay's cell phone extraction, April 2024. I think they're all involved. Not directly, I think they're all just involved. Brian Tully was directly involved, as was Mick Garino. But it all just lines up. It all lines up with the way that it was done, the timing, how malicious it was, what was removed from the extraction, how Kate's people always use Lindsay as a distraction. That's how you know. If you see a Kate Peter person, anyone, talking about Lindsay, attacking her, smearing her, even like bringing up stuff that people have shown about Lindsay that's negative and looking like they're like defending Lindsay, no, they're just trying to use her as a distraction. See what's going on, folks. Don't buy into the control. You have independence of spirit and mind. You have no loyalty to these people. You are not in a cult. No one is above reproach, as Bossy Texas Chick said earlier. And that includes the people who stand up for viewpoints we may agree with on some issues. All right? So I want to just break this spell a little bit. I want to show you the data. And I want to show you that when no amount of political connections could fix the public attention on Jen McCabe, I think her friends Brian Tully and Kate Peta, a little assistance from Nick Garino, the same man involved in processing Sandra Birchmore's cell phone extraction for John Fanning, released that extraction on purpose. That's worse than Michael Proctor withholding all that evidence from criminal defendants. It's not as bad as the cover-up of Sandra Birchmore. But you see the three issues now. The cover-up of Sandra Birchmore's murder, most serious. The leak of Lindsay Gattani's unredacted cell phone extraction under color of law, right below that. And then the impact, quite serious, but not as serious as the other two, of Proctor withholding evidence from at least 17 criminal defendants that, at the bare minimum, would have been used on cross, but in some cases might have actually, due to prejudice, resulted in the charges being thrown out. And on that note, let's continue the video.
For their phone data, the feds take that data and compare it to the secret copy they made. Any deleted texts, any hidden files, it's instantly obvious. And that lie, that act of hiding evidence, becomes a brand new, clean, and super easy to prove federal crime, obstruction of justice. Okay, but you might be thinking, this sounds like a whole lot of work just for one state trooper who lied about some text messages. Why would the Department of Justice bring out this kind of heavy artillery for a local case in Massachusetts? Well, because the theory is this was never just about Michael Proctor. The idea is that Proctor's phone is just a single thread, and the federal government isn't just trying to pull on one thread, they're trying to unravel an entire tapestry. They're trying to dismantle a whole network of officers who are allegedly bound together by a conspiracy of silence. And to get a sense of just how high the stakes are, listen to how this whole underlying scandal is being described, not just as a problem, but as potentially the worst thing that has ever happened in this state. When you hear language like that, you know we're dealing with something incredibly serious. And this is where the web gets really tangled. You've got Michael Proctor, right? He's being targeted for obstruction. But he's connected to this network that includes another trooper, Matt Farwell, who's accused of the horrific 2021 murder of a pregnant woman, Sandra Birchmore. And then you have other names, like Brian Tully and John Fanning, who are also suspected of being part of a cover-up, leaking records and writing bogus reports to protect their own. And that right there is the whole point. The obstruction trap set for people like Proctor and McCabe, they aren't the end goal. They are leverage. They are powerful tools designed to squeeze people inside this network, to force them to finally break that code of silence and tell the world the full truth about the alleged cover-up of Sandra Birchmore's murder. So you can see how the potential fallout from this federal investigation could be absolutely massive. We're talking about something that could go far beyond just a few individuals and could literally shake the foundations of law enforcement in Massachusetts. Think about this number, 2. It's a chilling number. Because Sandra Birchmore was pregnant when she was killed, the feds have apparently added her unborn child to the charges. What that means is that anyone who is found to have helped cover up that crime could face not one, but 2 separate charges of conspiracy to commit murder. The pressure to talk, to cooperate, must be absolutely immense. I mean, the potential fallout here is just staggering. You could be looking at sprawling federal indictments against an entire unit of state troopers. You have Matt Farwell, who's facing a potential death penalty. He has every reason in the world to cooperate and start naming names. This could blow the lid off a deep, systemic culture of corruption and abuse. And maybe, just maybe, it's a chance to save the Commonwealth, as they say, and protect people who can't protect themselves.
Damn good video. Damn good video. Now, a lot of people are talking about the PR of all this. So let's read Little Towel's post from this morning. All right? We're going to read through it. Then I got a video about Towel's analogy of the cave. And we'll watch that. You know why? Because that's my favorite video and because you are a towel. I'm still flummoxed. Well, I'm not flummoxed. I told you all the commies were coming. But now I got to wake up and look at how the commies run New York. Listen, I already don't like the New York Yankees. I try to tolerate everybody, but I'm not tolerating communism. No one is going to make me tolerate communism. It's like Islamic radicals. They're going to take over the United States, and then people are going to be like, Grant, we just wanted to be tolerant of them. They took over the United States. They made us communist. They're going to turn us into Sharia law. I'm not going along with it. Absolutely no chance, under no circumstances, am I accepting communism. Now listen, no matter how divergent our views on other things may be, please tell me we can all agree that we do not want the United States to be a communist dictatorship. Please, we can agree on that, right? Like, can we all just, no matter how divided we are, please tell me, nobody wants this to become a communist dictatorship. I can't deal with it. I'm sorry, we're not becoming communist. We already fought that fight. Please, just please tell me we can agree on that baseline point that we are not becoming a communist dictatorship. Second to that, please tell me we're not going to adopt Sharia law now. How are the liberals doing this? What is wrong with them? They're like, oh, communism, that's a great... Oh, dear God. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do, folks. The damn commies are on the rampage. And I'm a towel and a hat, and the commies are on the rampage. What are we going to do as a society? Bella, the communists are here. Round up the kitty CIA. Start up the unit again. We got to do something about it, Bella. I did not think I was going to have to call you into service, but I must do so. Yes, no, you are not a commie, none of your business. Jay, I'm a little bit worried that you're not proclaiming your anti-communism here. I'm a little concerned. Jay, are you a communist? Listen, we're going to have to hold some hearings, all right? It's going to be the Towel Committee on Un-American Activities. We're going to hold some hearings, all right? Let me begin. Okay, Mr. J, if that is your real name, do you disavow the Communist Party? What about you, JI5? Do you disavow the Communist Party? Oh, dear God. Listen, no, I will not tolerate any communists. Jay, you must disavow your participation in the Communist Party, or I'm going to have to send you to Siberia. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. There are none opposed. You're going to Siberia. All right, Troy, what about you? Troy, are you a communist? This is a very important Towel hearing. We've decided impromptu that I am the Towel Committee on Un-American Activities. Are you? Thank you, Jay. Jay disavows the Communist Party. This is good to know. All right, our little, what do we call this, moment of levity. Would you like to formally disclaim, Troy, the Communist Party? I think that is probably a yes. I've never got the sense Troy is a communist sympathizer, but let me just tell you all right now. This is the Towel Committee on Un-American Activities. There will be no communist uprising. Troy would like to let us know he is not a communist. All right, I'm thrilled by this development. None of you, outside of Jay, who I think was kidding, have actually declared the membership in the Communist Party. So at least in this chat, it's like an exclave oblast of American Republic spirit, okay? We are not communists. But as far as I understand, New York is now communist. All right? Now, listen. New York is technically on our border. But then again, Cambridge is also communist, but they're also on our, in Massachusetts. But they don't have a standing militia, as far as I'm aware. And I don't think the city of New York has a standing militia either. So maybe I'm a little bit more concerned about this than I need to be. No, I am still concerned. The city of New York has a lot of resources. We cannot let them take over the government. We cannot let the communists win. J5's like, don't send me to Siberia, please. Jay says, is Kate a government agent of mass? Apparently people in here think otherwise. The narration voice is good, I agree. Well, let's talk a little bit about what a government agent is, all right? I think I talked about it in another video. I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. But for Fourth Amendment purposes, a government agent, it really has to do with the exclusionary rule. It also has to do with a little bit of reciprocal discovery obligations, but there's a broader term called the prosecution team in Massachusetts under Rule 14. That doesn't really, we have to bifurcate like what Rule 14 mandates as by virtue of the definitional scope of the word prosecution team versus what the term government agent means in the more narrow, precising context as to the Fourth Amendment and the exclusionary rule. Why do I say this? Okay, well, think about what the Fourth Amendment says. It says that you have no unreasonable searches or seizures shall occur, but in the case of an issuance of a warrant from a court based on probable cause in a criminal proceeding. However, the key point is the Fourth Amendment only attaches to the government. Okay, I don't remember what the specific word is. I guess we should look at the Fourth Amendment. All right, let's just look at the Fourth Amendment. That's the best way to do this. Okay, Fourth Amendment. All right, we're just going to look at it. All right, we're going to be good little towels. All right, thank you, Mr. Google. I appreciate our ability to look at this. Hold on one second. Thank you. Okay, so I just want the text of the 14th Amendment. Okay, the Library of Congress. That's a great way to get it. All right, so let's take a look. Everybody welcome Forget about, what do they call the class? Auntie Deb calls this thing a class. No, you really want to do a class. You pull up the Fourth Amendment on the congressional website and you read it. All right, here's the Fourth Amendment. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Now, oh, interesting. So it's an unenumerated part of the Fourth Amendment. Now, let's go to the next part of the analysis. Hold on, let me take this down for a second. The next part of the analysis is, why does the Fourth Amendment only apply to the government? And then we're going to look at this, okay? I'm not aware. This is not legal advice, okay? All right, so here we go. We're going to read the answer from Google. I'm not saying this is right, but I imagine it did a good job. Okay, the answer is, the Fourth Amendment applies only to the government because its historical purpose was to protect citizens from government overreach, stemming from abuses like the general warrants and writs of assistance used by British officials. The amendment's text, which it quotes again, explicitly addresses the action of a government entity. Well, it doesn't explicitly, actually. It implicitly but explicitly at the same time does that. And provides a check on its power, not on private individuals. While the amendment can apply to private searches if the private actor is an agent of the government, it does not govern searches conducted by private citizens acting independently. All right, so you have some idea. It's because the purpose of the framers was to only really think about the government. But let's think about this. What does government agent mean in the context of the Fourth Amendment? Specific cases. Okay, we're going to look at a summary here. We have it from the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, which is a .gov. Oh, they're going to read it for me? Oh, come on, please tell me you'll actually read it. Come on. Oh, it doesn't have this one. Oh, I think we can read it, though. Okay, so let's listen to this. I think I have a way to read it for us. Hold on, no promises. This could be really interesting. If you are interested in the whole Cape Peter, Norfolk County situation, I'm going to drop a link for you in the chat right now, okay? We can listen to it. This is a glorious day. We get to learn about the government agent provision of the Fourth Amendment. You don't understand, and we get to do it from a government resource, which is fletc.gov. You can find the link in the chat if you want to read along. It has a whole audio file. I'm so excited. I love learning about this stuff. You don't understand. There's nothing that excites me quite so much as the unenumerated interpretation, or the enumeration of the various clauses of the U.S. Constitution, in particular the amendments by courts. It's so fascinating. It's almost as fascinating as the merging of courts of law and equity in the 30s and the emergence of the federal rules. Oh my goodness, you don't understand. This is some of my favorite topics under the sun. Don't some of you all see this is what I'm meant to do? Just put me up in front of people. I will tell them interesting things. I'll teach them. I'll empower them. We'll have a stronger democracy. Someone make me a professor. Where should I be a professor? I'm not really sure. All right, so here we go. Yes, that is true, JI5, but you are about to get an explication in the exact actions by a state actor, in particular a police officer, that can change a PI or a CI or a person providing information to the police from a private citizen to a government actor. You're going to find out the scope of the conduct. It's a totality of the circumstances test. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a towel. This is not legal advice. It's a totality of the circumstances test that looks at things like the scope and knowledge of the police officer's relationship to the person providing information, whether there was an active effort to communicate with that person during the providing of information, whether the police instructed the person to provide information at any point in time, whether there was a remuneration or a gift or other consideration provided for the exchange of information, including protection from criminal charges, things like that. There's a lot of ways that someone become a government actor. I knight you, Judge Grant. There, done. I don't know if I want to be a judge. I think what I'd like to be is like someone who has committees. You know, like this is Towel's committee on un-American activities. You will tell me whether you are a communist, you damn commie. I'll do all sorts of interesting oversight hearings. Mr. Towel goes to Washington. All right, folks, that's the only answer. Send me to Washington. I will wear a suit. I have a suit on today. I have my little Virgin Mary button. All right, let's listen to this. Who's ready to learn? JI5 is going to learn some new things. We will have a quiz on this after, okay? This quiz will be worth a substantial part of your non-existent grade. I will hold you accountable for understanding what the term government agent means under the context of the 14th Amendment. Everyone ready? We're going to be erudite and cogent little towels. Everyone pay attention. Please turn your cell phones to silent and avoid looking at any meme videos during this part of the lecture. This will be tested. It won't actually, but I think that's hilarious to say. I'm practicing, you know what I'm saying? Want to get the students' attention. That's how you do it, Auntie Deb.
Hi, I'm Tim Miller. I'm back again with Mrs. Solari. We're continuing our journey through the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. Now, recently we discussed what triggers the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution, specifically that it's a government intrusion into a place where one has a reasonable expectation of privacy. And when the government intrudes into a place where one has a reasonable expectation of privacy, the Fourth Amendment requires the search to be reasonable. Well, now we're going to answer the question, who exactly is a government agent? Ms. Solari, can you help me with this?
Sure, yes, sir. Most generally, a government agent would be somebody acting in an official capacity on behalf of a federal or state government. And the courts have told us, some people think that's limited just to law enforcement officers, but the courts have told us that that's extended actually to include other government actors like firefighters or building inspectors or even public school officials.
Okay. Well, how about an ATF agent? An ATF agent intrudes into my house maybe to look for explosives.
Sure, absolutely. That person would be a government agent under the Fourth Amendment, yes, sir.
And a Georgia Bureau investigation agent. He comes into my house, maybe looking for narcotics.
Yes, even though the GBI agent is a state actor, the Fourth Amendment applies to state and federal agents.
All right. Well, what about my disgruntled wife or girlfriend? She comes inside my house looking for maybe, I don't know, any type of evidence that I might have inside the house. Would that disgruntled wife or girlfriend, would she trigger the Fourth Amendment?
Normally, no. As long as she's not acting at the behest of the government or on behalf of the government, if she's just acting out of her own private interest and her own personal capacity, then she would not be considered a government agent.
All right. Well, what about let me ask you this. What about going down to a nightclub? A lot of nightclubs have bouncers. Suppose that bouncer, searches, reaches inside my pocket for something. I assume he's going inside a place where I have a reasonable expectation of privacy, my pocket. Does that trigger the Fourth Amendment?
No, actually. It is an intrusion into your reasonable expectation of privacy. But as we discussed in our earlier session, really it has to be a government intrusion into that REP. And since the bouncer at that nightclub isn't a government agent, then the Fourth Amendment isn't concerned with that action and wouldn't apply.
How about a foreign law enforcement agent overseas?
No, our Fourth Amendment doesn't apply to foreign agents in other countries and their law enforcement actions. Okay.
United Parcel Service and FedEx, those are both private corporations.
Yes.
You agree?
Yes, sir.
So if that United Parcel Service employee looks inside a package that I'm delivering, of course he's going inside a place where I have a reasonable expectation of privacy, but again, that UPS employee, he's a private employee, right?
Yes.
And I would assume now that there'd be no government intrusion, correct?
No, sir, unless he was for some reason acting on behalf of the government or had been asked by a government agent to do that. Unless that were the case, then if that person's acting in his own private capacity as a UPS or a FedEx employee, then he would not be a government agent for Fourth Amendment purposes.
Can private parties ever trigger the Fourth Amendment?
Yes. As we've discussed, if a private party were to be acting at the behest of the government, if a government agent were to ask that FedEx person to open up a package and look inside, or to ask someone's girlfriend to go through their things looking for evidence to turn over to the police, then that would be government activity. That would be the actions of a government agent, because government agents can't ask private parties to do something they themselves couldn't do under the Fourth Amendment. So in that type of instance, it would be extended to that private party.
Okay. Now, I've got to ask you this. Now, who exactly is protected under the Fourth Amendment from these government agents?
Well, the Fourth Amendment says that the people are protected, and they could have used the word citizens, but they did not. So it actually extends not only to U.S. citizens, And first, I should say that it extends to U.S. citizens both here in the U.S. and while abroad, if the intrusion into the REP is conducted by a U.S. agent. Our citizens are protected here and abroad. Also, members of the armed forces are protected here in the U.S. and abroad. Again, when the intrusion into REP involves a U.S. agent. And corporations are protected. Although you wouldn't normally think of them as people, they are included as people for Fourth Amendment purposes. So corporations have legal rights under the Fourth Amendment to be secure from unreasonable searches and seizures.
Okay, well, you were a Naval Criminal Investigative Service agent, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I would assume a Marine in Camp Pendleton, California would be protected under the Fourth Amendment from an unreasonable search by a Naval Criminal Investigative Service agent.
Absolutely.
And what if that Marine goes over to Japan? Does he receive the same protections from the NCIS?
He does. He receives the same protection against unreasonable searches and seizures by U.S. agents such as Naval Criminal Investigative Service. However, the situation is a little bit different if he's out in town somewhere in Japan and Japanese law enforcement agents want to conduct a search or a seizure. Our Fourth Amendment provisions don't apply to foreign law enforcement agents, again, unless they're acting on our behalf or unless we've requested them to do that search.
So if the Naval Criminal Investigative Service told the Japanese police officer to go inside an off-base apartment, then he would, in essence, deputize that foreign agent, and that foreign agent would trigger the Fourth Amendment. Do you agree with that?
Yes, sir, because we'd essentially be using that Japanese agent as an extension of ourselves. So we can't do with... by going through Japanese law enforcement, we couldn't do anything that U.S. agents couldn't accomplish legally under the Fourth Amendment. That'd be sort of cheating.
Okay, we got one more what if for you.
All right.
What if a United States agent searches a foreign national's property in a foreign country? For example, suppose a DEA agent goes down to Mexico and searches a Mexican national's home.
Okay. Well, I don't know what his jurisdictional problems may be as far as his agency is concerned, but as far as the Fourth Amendment issue, foreign nationals in a foreign country are those who are not protected by Fourth Amendment provisions.
Okay. Hey, I think I understand that. Thank you very much, ma'am, and we will see you again. We're going to talk when we talk about what a reasonable expectation of privacy is.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Well, wasn't that interesting, folks? Now, I have one more overview we're going to watch here. And I really want to narrow it on this government agent discussion, okay? I want to do it for a few reasons, okay? Mostly, I want to look at what makes a confidential informant as to a private investigator providing information to police. I want to look, or a confidential informant. I want to look at the specific case on this. I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice, but there is a case on this. I think it's U.S. v. White, right? Yep. And then Marovario and maybe U.S. v. Jacobson we'll look at as well. But let's look at U.S. v. White overview here, and I'm going to see if I can find a video overview. This really tells us, this is a really good case for us to learn about. And let me see if I can get an actual explication, because it's not just the case. It's what it means in terms of what it means when someone acts as a government agent. Right, so let me see. Oh, we could actually listen to the oral arguments? Oh, that would be so interesting. No way this is that case. This has got to be a different case. No, it's from 1971. It's not from 2024. I was going to say they didn't have video in courts in 1971. Maybe they did, but I don't think so. All right, so hold on. I want to find you a good overview of this case. It's not even the right case. Hold on. Because I really want to look at... It's not just standing. It's talking about, what a government agent is. All right, so I think I got an overview here. Let me just bring this up on the screen. This educational purposes. Let's see if this helps us. All right? No problem.
United States v. White, 1971. In 1966, James A. White was convicted in federal court of selling narcotics. His conviction was based on information provided by Harvey Jackson, a government informant who wore a secret electronic wire, and by a federal agent hiding in the closet of Jackson's home. Jackson gave consent to wearing the wire and to have an agent in his house. In addition, the agents recorded conversations in a restaurant and a car using the wire. At trial, the informant was not present, and the testimony against White was given by the agents who listened to the transmissions from the wire. White appealed his conviction on the grounds that recording the conversations using an electronic wire without a warrant violated the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution. The case went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. In a 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court ruled that testimony from government agents related to conversations overheard from electronic surveillance is admissible as evidence without a warrant. The court ruled that it was not necessary to have the informant at trial so long as the government agents who overheard the conversations were present to give testimony.
Okay, doesn't help us as much as I wanted, but gets us a little bit of the way there. Let's look at Rovario v. U.S., okay? Because I think that will give us some more context. We really want to dive into this because it really, really, really tells us what we need to do. All right, so I found something from the UNC case. Let me see if I can. Let's see if this actually gives us what we want. Hold on. This is about modifying discovery for a CI and when they became a CI. That's not what I want. I want something that talks about when you become a government informant. When does someone become a government agent under the Fourth Amendment? So I really want an explainer of all these cases at once. And someone had to have done a class on this. It's like a key part of the Fourth Amendment. Oh, this is so frustrating. All right, let's try U.S. v. Jacobson. All right, maybe that's the case on point. And I really want to dive into this because it's going to be crucial to some of these cases, like what Kate was doing as a government informant. So let's watch this over. Let's see if this gives us some more help. I got to know this stuff anyway, so I want to learn about it.
United States v. Jacobson, 1983. On May 1st, 1981, a supervisor at the Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport Federal Express office asked the office manager to look at a package that had been damaged and torn by a forklift. They opened the package to view the contents, pursuant to a company policy regarding insurance claims. They discovered tubes full of white powder inside. Federal Express notified the Drug Enforcement Administration, or DEA, about their discovery. When DEA agents arrived, they conducted a field test of the white powder and discovered that it was cocaine. After the discovery, they obtained a search warrant for the place to which the package was addressed and arrested Thomas and Donna Marie Jacobson for possession with intent to distribute. They moved to suppress the evidence on the grounds that the search was a violation of the Fourth Amendment protection from unwarranted search and seizure. The case went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. In a 7-2 decision, the Supreme Court upheld the search as reasonable under the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution. The court ruled that since the search was conducted by private agents, the police search was not unreasonable. The court also ruled that the field test of the white powder was not unreasonable as well.
All right. So, pardon me. What we really need is a case where someone actually becomes a government agent under the Fourth Amendment. So let me... because they're not, this is kind of what we want, but what I need is when someone actually counts as a government agent. So this is a good summary. Oh, okay. I have two good summaries from two different pages. One is from, what is this? This is from some kind of Legal Liability Risk Management Institute, all right? So that's a good one. And then another one I have is from the Bayes Law Firm. All right. So we're going to use both of these for academic purposes. to, one of them looks like they represented Aaron Hernandez, but we're going to read both of these, and I hope that that will give us finality on this, and then I'll read my post, and then we'll roll up before 11. All right, so give me 1 second. I got to do some finagling to make this work, but I think we're going to be able to listen to this. Give me 1 second. No promises here. No promises. All right, here we go. Sometimes it does it, sometimes it doesn't. Depends if it likes me or not on that day. All right, here we go.
When is a private citizen acting as a government agent? On the 6th of July, 2018, the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals decided the United States v. Highball, I, in which the court examined whether the Fourth Amendment applied when a woman retrieved a cell phone out of her boyfriend's car and gave it to the police. The relevant facts of Highball are as follows. On the 19th of February, 2015, the Sioux Falls Police Department received a domestic disturbance call from a young boy, who reported that a man was harassing his mother. Andrew Matson was the first officer to respond to the call. Upon arriving at the scene, Officer Matson was flagged down by Michelle Janice, the mother of the boy who placed the call. Janice can be heard on a recording from Officer Matson's body microphone exclaiming that someone had just taken off running. Officer Matson asked her what was going on, and she responded, "I wanted to sign a complaint on him. He went and had pictures of my daughter naked, and she's only 13. Janice identified the man as Highball and informed Officer Matson that the red Ford Taurus that was left running in front of her building belonged to him. A license plate check revealed that the Taurus was registered to Highball at Janice's address. Janice then entered the vehicle, and Officer Matson asked if she was going to grab the keys. Although she said yes, Janice merely turned off the car, leaving the keys in the ignition. Rejoining Officer Matson on the sidewalk in front of her apartment, Janice explained that she and Highball had been arguing several days earlier because she refused to let him see their infant daughter. It was during this argument that she looked at Highball's phone and saw the naked pictures of her 13-year-old daughter, who was not related to Highball. At that point, Officer Matson asked Janice, "Do you have the phone?" Without explanation, she began walking back toward the Taurus and stammered, I don't know if it's this. I think it's. I don't know. I think he does have one. He probably got rid of it or whatever." She then re-entered the vehicle just as Officer Matson's backup arrived. The two officers conferred several feet away from the Taurus for the 30 seconds Janice was inside the vehicle. Officer Matson later testified that he never directed Janice to enter the Taurus or to look for the phone, that he himself neither opened nor entered the car, and that his attention was on the backup officer while Janice was in the vehicle. After her brief time in the Taurus, Janice emerged with Highball's cell phone and handed it to Officer Matson. She explained that there were nude photos of her daughter on the device but that she could no longer locate them because they were deeper in the phone. When Officer Matson could not find the pictures, Janice became upset, worrying that nothing was going to be done. Officer Matson explained that he could not make an arrest solely on the basis of her statements but that he would take the phone for further investigation. A subsequent forensic analysis conducted pursuant to a search warrant uncovered the images. 2. Highball was later charged under federal law for sexual exploitation of a child. He filed a motion to suppress and argued that Janice was acting as an agent of the police when she retrieved the phone and gave it to the officer, and therefore the Fourth Amendment applied. Ultimately, the district court denied the motion to suppress, and Highball entered a guilty plea with the right to appeal the denial of the motion to suppress. Highball then appealed the denial of his motion to suppress to the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. The issue on appeal was whether Janice was acting as an agent.
Pause. So people might not understand what that means. We have it in Massachusetts. I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. It's called a conditional guilty plea. You plead guilty, but you leave room to appeal specific issues. And then if you win on that, your guilt gets overturned, basically. It's complex. It exists. Defense lawyers really like it. It's apparently helpful. I don't know enough about it to pass judgment. Appellate lawyers love it, but I don't really know enough to pass judgment. But if you're wondering what that means, it just means he applied for a, he accepted a conditional guilty plea and, well, reserved the right to appeal on just this issue. By the way, this also shows you could be a horrifying criminal, and if they do bad things, if they're the cops, it sometimes will get overturned. I don't know how this case is going to play out. I'm going to listen to it with you. I really don't want him to get off because of that misconduct. But this is going to tell us what we need to know. This is the case on point, so let's do it.
for the police when she entered her boyfriend's car and retrieved his cell phone, which she said contained nude photographs of her juvenile daughter. The Court of Appeals first noted the legal principles that apply to searches conducted by private citizens. The court first stated, "The Fourth Amendment guarantees the right of citizens to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures." U.S. Const. Amend. 4. However, as the Supreme Court has long held, this protection extends only to actions undertaken by government officials or those acting at their direction. See, for example, Skinner v. R.Y. Labor XXR Sen. 489 U.S. 602, 613-14, 1989, Coolidge v. New Hampshire, 403 U.S. 443, 487, 1971, Birdie O. v. McDowell, 256 U.S. 465, 475, 1921. Thus, the Fourth Amendment does not apply to a search or seizure, even an arbitrary one, effected by a private party on his own initiative, but it does protect against such intrusions if the private party acted as an instrument or agent of the government. Skinner, 489 U.S. at 614.3, emphasis added. Thus, if Janice was acting as an agent of the police, then the Fourth Amendment would apply and the search would have to be supported by search warrant or an exception to the search warrant requirement. On the other hand, if Janice acted as a private citizen, the Fourth Amendment rules would not apply to her search and seizure of the phone. Next, the court discussed the factors to consider when they determine whether the private person was acting privately or as an agent for the police. The court stated, "Whether a private party should be deemed an agent or instrument of the government for Fourth Amendment purposes necessarily turns on the degree of the government's participation in the private party's activities, a question that can only be resolved in light of all the circumstances." United States v. Weist, 596 F.3d 906, 910, 8th Sir 2010, quoting Skinner, 489 U.S. at 614. In evaluating agency in the Fourth Amendment context, our court has focused on three relevant factors. 1. Whether the government had knowledge of and acquiesced in the intrusive conduct. 2. Whether the citizen intended to assist law enforcement or instead acted to further his own purposes. And 3. Whether the citizen acted at the government's request. ID.4. Emphasis added.
There you go. That's the test. 1. Whether the government, so think about Kate Peter and her relationship to Brian Tully, Michael Morrissey, whatever. 1. Whether the government had knowledge of and acquiesced in the intrusive conduct. 2. Whether the citizen intended to assist law enforcement or instead acted to further his or her own purposes. And 3. Whether the citizen acted at the government's request. Bro, it's a totality of the circumstances test too. Of course she fits that definition, and that's Skinner, 489 U.S. at 614. Okay, I'm not a lawyer, there's no legal advice. Look at that test. Look at that test. It's a three-prong totality test, which means you look at all of them. Whether the government had knowledge of and acquiesced in Kate's intrusive conduct. Yes. 2, whether Kate intended to assist law enforcement. She was openly talking on Twitter about how she was doing this to get him locked up and in messages to Kearney on voicemail, or instead acted to further his own purposes. Well, if your purpose is a law enforcement purpose, you intended to assist law enforcement. And whether the citizen acted at the government's request. So Tully doesn't even have to ask her. She can passively do it. He can acquiesce. Combine that with whether Kate's intent, openly stated on social media and in voicemails, was to be helping law enforcement, not as an agent, but just to help them. And then add on a request from Tully. You just checked all three boxes, bruh. All right? I knew it was rough. I didn't know Skinner was the case. I'm going to nail this part if it's on my exam. Let me tell you that right now. I'm a little towel. But yeah, this is so helpful. This is incredibly helpful. Let's continue. I want to learn about this all day. I get to learn about this all day. You don't understand. My whole life is the Fourth Amendment right now. Those words, that Fourth Amendment we read earlier, it may seem like it's like 4 lines. Bro, it's like 250 years of case law. Every single word gets torn apart. They break words into meanings that you wouldn't think they have, and then they just are like, well, we interpreted it to mean that, so now let's go on this other 17 series of cases where we decide what isn't a government actor. All right, let's do it. This is my favorite thing in the entire world.
It was also noted that the defendant bears the burden of establishing the 3 factors above. V. The court then applied the factors above to the facts of Highball's case. Regarding the first factor, whether the government had knowledge of and acquiesced in the search, the court said that this weighed in favor of finding agency. This is because the officer was present and watched her enter the car as he asked if she had the phone. The second factor, whether the citizen intended to assist law enforcement or instead to further his own purposes, the court noted that even when government officials know of and acquiesce in a warrantless search, we have been unwilling to impute agency where the private actor was not motivated solely or even primarily by the intent to aid the officers and where the government did not request the challenged search. See United States v. Smith, 383 F.3d 700, 705, 8th Sir 2004. Emphasis added. It was noted that Janice did not testify in the hearing at the motion to suppress, so she was never asked what her purpose was in the search for the phone. Highball argued that her explicit intent was to assist law enforcement because protecting her daughter involved law enforcement. In examining this factor, the court looked at the Eighth Circuit case, the United States v. Smith. 6. In Smith, a FedEx manager opened a package after a drug detection dog alerted on the package. Drugs were observed and the police were contacted. The Eighth Circuit held the manager was not acting as an agent of the police. The court reasoned that she had the dual purpose of not allowing her driver to be used to transport contraband in addition to the aiding law enforcement. The court reasoned that because the manager was not motivated solely or even primarily by the intent to aid law enforcement, the manager was not an agent of law enforcement. The Eighth Circuit then applied the principle from Smith to Highball's case and determined that Janice may have similarly had a dual motive of protecting her daughter and aiding law enforcement. However, if this is the case, the court held the district court did not err in finding that aiding law enforcement was not Janice's sole or even primary motive in the search, in light of the fact that she also had a strong motive to protect her daughter, as well as help a civil custody case she had against Highball. As such, this weighted in favor of not finding agency on the part of Janice. Regarding the third factor, whether the government requested Janice to conduct the search, the court noted that the officer did not specifically ask Janice to bring him the phone or search the car. The officer simply asked, "Do you have the phone?" This request did not imply that the officer wanted her to search his car for the phone, but rather was an inquiry if it was already in her possession. As such, her search was voluntary and unsolicited. Thus, the third factor weighed in favor of not finding agency on the part of Janice. In light of the above factors and the application of the holding in Smith, the court held. Half the district court found that Officer Matson knew of and acquiesced in Janice's search of the vehicle. It did not err in denying Highball's motion to suppress given that she did not conduct the search at the government's request and that there was insufficient evidence that she was motivated solely or even primarily by the intent to aid the officers. CID. 7. Therefore, Highball's conviction was affirmed. ____. Citations.
All right, well, at least his conviction was affirmed, but you can see the court, if it's a really bad person, normally will overlook some officer, mistakes. He almost got away with it there. If that officer had said, "Will you please go get me the phone?" instead of "Do you have the phone?" Bro, literally the word will versus do. Will you get me the phone versus do you have the phone? That was all that saved that conviction. I'm telling you, I just listened to that whole thing. So now, yes, but JI5, you have to, every case is going to have different facts. What you want to do, I'm not a lawyer, this is not legal advice, you want to pull out the IRAC from the case. Issue, rule, application, conclusion. You look at the issue, we heard the issue on appeal, whether Janice was acting as a government agent. You look at the rule, it's a three-pronged test. You look at the application of the facts in the given case to the rule, you look at the conclusion. When you're analytically pulling out the precedent, because remember, precedent works by applying the conclusions of law from one specific set of facts to the conclusions of law in an entirely different set of facts. So while we're talking about a cell phone search here, what you want to think about that as is broadly an intrusion into a privacy interest, okay? A search is any time a government actor or government official enters a possessory interest or an area that society would expect there to be a reasonable expectation of privacy for that area. It's complicated, we're not going down that road. the point is, it's not about the search of the cell phone. That's one fact that the court is taking into consideration. It's more about what words the officer used to Janice under the analysis from Smith and what was the first case there? It's a very important case. I don't want to forget it. Hold on. It is Skinner. What the court's doing is looking at Skinner, looking at Smith, and then applying it to the facts. This defendant, this dude won on the first factor. He won on whether or not she was, whether the government had knowledge of and acquiesced. So if he had won on one more of the three factors, the totality balances in favor of excluding the search. It's not about the cell phone. It's about the actions. You got to remove what they found or the cell phone or what's at issue. It's about whether the search, and in this context, whether the woman doing the search in the presence of the police officer made her a government agent. It didn't. It almost did. If that cop had said to her, "Will you go get me the phone?" Bro, his conviction might have been overturned. But because he said, "Do you have the phone?" It's not a request. Kate Peters' fact pattern is not going to look like this. It's going to look way more brutal for the state. They're going to have a way higher time. Now, the burden's on the defendant, which is Kearney in these cases. The burden's on the defendant, but I'm telling you, it's not as, that fact pattern is way more favorable to Janice, that woman Janice, than it would be to the fact pattern under Kate Peter. That's just my lay analysis. Now I want to read this other one. For some reason, Aaron Hernandez is up there. I want to read this other one as well. Oh, you're online, you speak Spanish? Entiendo español también. I want to read this because, again, I'm really in a rabbit hole here, but this is really relevant to, like, the Lauren Murray cases involving Kate Peter.
Does the Fourth Amendment apply to private?
So this is really relevant to the Lauren Murray cases being prosecuted in Norfolk County, where the Norfolk DA is saying they don't have a conflict with Kate Peter. This is relevant because if in the Aidan Kearney cases, Kate Peter is like a witness or becomes a government agent due to a ruling there, then of course the Norfolk DA is a conflict in Kate's criminal cases where she's the defendant for felony WI related to Lauren Murray. So that's why this is so relevant. It plays out, Kate touches everything. I don't know why these people talk to her, but it's not just Michael Proctor's phone and Tully and Buchanan and Fanning. It's Kate talking to Morrissey and Kate talking to Tully and Kate talking to Jen McCabe and Jen McCabe talking to Tully and Tully talking to Pam Friedman and God knows who else was involved in this chaos. That's why Kate Peter getting the designation of government agent has all these collateral consequences. Because it just, she was the one, more so than anything else, who I think was middlemaning the prosecution of Kearney for the Norfolk DA, the prosecution of Kearney and the investigation of Karen Reed after October of 2023 when the Norfolk DA recused. The special prosecutor process is broken, so Morrissey got to appoint the special prosecutor, and then Kate Peter and Brian Tully were like coordinating the investigation. It was really just Morrissey doing it, but these two were running amok because they were doing stuff that they shouldn't have been doing, and Morrissey knew about it, but Morrissey needed their help, and Jen McCabe was in the mix and all of this, and there's a lot of personal connections. That's what it's all about. So that's why this is central to it. I want to really tease this out. I want to go through one more article, make sure it buttresses what we just learned. I want to reinforce what we just learned, and then we're going to have a quiz. We're not actually going to have a quiz. I'm just telling you we're here to learn. Absolutely, Nunya. And if there's records... now remember, the first time the Norfolk DA turned over discovery to Kearney, they turned over 4,000 blank pages. And I bet a lot of it's Kate Peter communicating with Tully. We already know Kate started deleting evidence, according to what was said in court by Kearney's lawyer, Tim Bradle, or Betterow, I don't remember. Kate's already started deleting evidence. It was submitted to the grand jury, so there's a record of it, but she's already started deleting evidence. She was probably deleting evidence related to the grand jury that Tully used to, and whoever else, Mello, to indict the felonies from 2023, from October, involving all these people that know Tully and Kate. Chris Albert, Colin Albert, Jen McCabe, Matt McCabe, Julie Nagel. Come on now. She compromised those cases too. And then the Norfolk DA, to avoid, I think, their misconduct coming out related to Kate and the release of the phone, Lindsay's phone or whatever by Tully, I think they then refused to appoint a special prosecutor and tried to circumvent Judge Krupp's order by just no-prossing those cases, bro. That's a really strong abuse of prosecutorial discretion. It's corruption. I'm sorry, Bossy Texas chick. It's blatant corruption. It's corruption with Proctor's phone. It's corruption with the Sandra Birchmore cover-up. It's corruption with the leak of Lindsay's phone. It's corruption with the inside baseball on Kate's case, the criminal cases. It's corruption with hiding Kate being a government agent. It's corruption with Kate deleting evidence. It's corruption with a lot of this stuff, all right, down to the court. It's corruption, corruption, corruption. That doesn't mean the John O'Keefe case was corrupted. Okay, that investigation wasn't great. There's some prejudicial statements, but it doesn't mean it was as corrupt as some of this stuff. No, bro, this stuff is way worse. And now you're seeing why, because if Kate Peters is a government agent, all the dominoes fall. That's why they're lashing out. They're so desperate right now. They're going like to the bottom of the well of their fucking tactics. Meanwhile, Little Towel knew all this was coming, and Little Towel learned exactly what he needed to learn about all the connections, all these people, so that when they moved, every single time that they moved, I'd be like, oh, so who's this person work with? Oh, who do you know? Oh, what agency are you with? Who's your boss's boss? That's interesting. Are you subject to the FOIA law? So, that's how it's going for me. But I want to keep learning about this because this is the last domino to fall. It really is Proctor's phone that's pushing a lot of this, plus Mabry v. Madison's excellent FOIAs. By the way, they're also hiding the whole Karen Reed case is impounded, and there's this motion to unimpound or to keep impounded the sidebars so that the Norfolk DA doesn't have to fill a public records request to Marbury v. Madison, who's a lawyer named Corey Hopkins. That's weird. There's so much freaking inside baseball, and it's all collapsing. It's because of the FOIAs from Marbury v. Madison. It's because of the Proctor's phone finally being released, which I think was because the feds had it the whole time and waited to see if he'd lie to the court. It's from Kate Peter just literally flailing around in desperation. Listen, everybody has a plan until the towel gets thrown over their face. Not literally, figuratively. Everybody's got a plan. Everybody's a joker, and they think they have a plan. You don't have a plan. You're not even playing chess. You shouldn't be on this board. It offends me that in the context of political policy, I have to deal with some of this. It really offends me. Okay, I'm not being paternalistic or pedantic or condescending. It offends me that some of these people thought they could play on this field. You don't get to just do things like that. That's crazy. They just act on impulse. They don't have a plan. You think Kate Peter had a plan for this? No, they're just reacting. And when you're reacting versus someone who has a plan, especially someone who knew all this was coming, saw how you were moving, knew where this was going. I didn't know it was going to be because of Proctor's phone and whatever. I didn't know about the superseding indictment of Farwell. I didn't know all this stuff was going to happen at once, but I knew. And I was just waiting, and now we're at the literal last moments, the desperation heave. And you can see it's all collapsing. And what happens, I've said it from the beginning, what happens when shit like this collapses is they go after the small fish, all right? They go after the small fish because they're expendable, because they're useless, because they have no power. And if Proctor's going down, then Tully's going down, Fanning's going down, because Proctor was not a small fish, okay? Sean Good's going down. All these people. And then who's going to be the person that they all point to? Because you can already see Kate and her friends trying to distance themselves from Proctor. No. Kate's going to be the fall person. Of course. They're going to be like, yeah, we worked with her, but she just went off the rails. Doesn't sound like Charlotte of the internet to me. Sounds like Nightmare PI Moms version 2. Kate, Peter, and Jen McCabe. Let's go down the seaport. Dear God, it's so true, though, because if you get that designation, if they tease this all out, where we open that Pandora's box of Kate's relationship to Tully, that's why this government agent thing is everything. People don't even get why Bradel's gonna really. This is what opens the Pandora's box. It helps Karen. It exposes all of them because Kate Peter was the central weak point of this whole thing. Doesn't have the skills, in my opinion, to really do this politically. Doesn't have the skills as a PI. Doesn't have the tactical intelligence. Just has brute force, trolling tactics. And maybe she has some networks that she knows that have operated in other arenas, and she thought the skills would translate. They don't in policy circles. I'm sorry, they don't. You don't win political fights with some of the tactics she was using. You really piss off people with a lot of connections. You really do. You really do. And just because you don't hear it, people talk, especially in government. Everybody talks, especially at those levels. So, yeah, you all got really bad reputations. Not you in the chat. I'm talking about, Kate Peter and her people. So, yeah, maybe you had some PR wins for a few years. But, bro, come on. The system's going to eat them alive. And it's because Kate's the central fail point. And this precedent we're learning about is what's going to lead to it all coming out. like court papers are as much about winning an argument in some of these cases as they are revealing information to the public. Okay, they're called speaking. Normally, it's called a speaking indictment, but like Betterow and Bradel like to use like speaking motions, where you're writing to the judge, but your actual audience is the public. Okay, what do you think they want to say? You think they care about like winning suppression of evidence or dismissal? Yeah, they want to move to get these cases dismissed under Odell, DiBenedetto, or McCarthy for prosecutorial misconduct, sure. But what their real point is they want to show what these people were doing, and they're allowed to do it in their court papers. That's why it's called a speaking motion. Now, Betterow got his hand slapped because he tried to use the New York-style letters, and judge was like, just do it as a motion. But he did it as a motion. It was a combined motion. It was like 3 motions. It was styled as 1 motion, but it was actually 3 motions. It might have been styled as an affidavit with motions in it. I think Betterow was just being spiteful at that point. He's an interesting lawyer to watch. I think he gets a little... Even Aidan Kearney said Betterow, I think, gets frustrated with him. He called, like, Bradel, like, the fun dad or something, and it was like, but Betterow doesn't let us have any fun. No shit. Betterow's like a serious... Betterow's like a constitutional scholar. Like, do you realize, like, the difference between a lawyer and someone who really loves the Constitution is, like, a constitutional scholar is a lawyer who is thinking tactically about precedent. They're the best lawyers. Like, the reason why constitutional scholars are the best lawyers is they don't just know one area of the law. They know the, what is it called? The panoply or the penumbra of law. And we like to say the Fourth Amendment is a penumbra. The right to privacy is a penumbra of rights. Every goddamn case, sorry for cussing, is a penumbra. Look into the last case we read. There was one case analyzing some woman trying to get a really bad guy. It had like 40 years of precedent, 3 different cases, a specific thread to narrow in on, from Skinner to White and whatever the other cases were. Every single case is a penumbra. So unless you know how to think like that, you're not going to be as effective as a lawyer. And so what do you think a lawyer like that is going to say to you? I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. They're going to be like, don't fuck up my strategy, you fucking... like whatever they're going to use. They're going to be very aggressive about it, and they're going to be like, you do not know, you don't understand, stop fucking up my case. They're going to say that over and over and over again. I cannot imagine the amount of times Betterow has had to sit there with Kearney and be like, you don't understand, it's not about what you want to say, it's about what we're trying to accomplish legally. You're going to fuck it up because you don't know about what the court said in this case from 1971. You know, and that's a lot of what it's like, in my opinion. I'm not a lawyer, I'm a towel. A lot of it is client management. Saying to the client, especially a client like that, okay, we have to bifurcate here what you want to do and what is going to impact the case. Especially if you have a good argument. It'd be like, let Kate Peter run her mouth. I'm not a lawyer, this is not legal advice. Let Kate Peter run her mouth all she fucking wants. Let her make the case. Don't help her. So it's just so interesting to me, the dynamics. I think Kearney even knows it. I saw a clip the other day where he realizes it. You know, like, if it's not... Betterow's not being strict, and Bradel is not being lenient. Bradel is a criminal defense lawyer who used to be a prosecutor. You want Bradel to win on, like, a very specific point about, like, DiBenedetto or something like that. Boom, he's in his wheelhouse, bro. Like, put him in front of a judge, let him argue about points of criminal procedure, he's in his wheelhouse. 90% of criminal procedure is the Constitution, but Bradel is a specialist in Massachusetts rules of criminal procedure. That is not a constitutional lawyer. It is a person who is well trained on both sides of rules of criminal procedure. That is not a constitutional lawyer. I just want to be clear. He knows the Constitution very well. He knows some of these cases. Betterow is a constitutional lawyer. He's kind of like Mark Randazza. Betterow thinks about this on a way different level. And it's not to say one version is better. Like, you need Bradel if you're a criminal defendant in Massachusetts. First of all, you need him on his game. I think, just as some constructive feedback, like, Bradel's fine, but he's spread too thin. Like, if you're going to represent Kelsey Fitzsimmons, do it. Like, focus on that shit, okay? And do it right. And he's starting to do it right. They got their appeal heard. It's going to be heard, not via oral argument, but the full court's going to hear it, the full SJC. Focus on that. Okay, do it right if that's your wheelhouse. But like that's what you want Bradle for. You want Bradle for intricate state Massachusetts state level, like bail revocation challenges, grand jury indictment challenges under Odell, DiBenedetto, or McCarthy. I love all three of those cases. I said that to a lecturer in class one time, a guest lecturer. I forget where he was from. He was some government official or something. And I was like, I love Odell, DiBenedetto, and McCarthy. And he was like, you're the first person I've ever heard say that. I was like, I do! They're very interesting. But the point is, that's what Bradle's in his wheelhouse. I've listened to so many of his oral arguments in front of the courts. District court, superior court, but like hours and hours. I've listened to Bradle in court like almost as much as Alan Jackson, if that's even possible. But anyway, the point is, Bradle's very good at criminal procedure, and that's a compliment because you can't be like a Colorado lawyer and come into Massachusetts and or a New York lawyer unless you do it often and understand like the county bar system or the prosecutors or the rules of criminal procedure. It's going to be like a foreign language to you, and I'm sure Bradle would say that about practicing criminal law in New York or something. Okay, but separate that from what Mark Betterow does. Mark Betterow, like Bradle's only thinking, like, how can I use the rules of procedure in Massachusetts and the case law in Massachusetts to get my client the best outcome? And then I think also Bradle's like a political operator, so he's like, do I know this person? Do I know that person? Do I know this? Did I work with that judge? Did I work with that person? Like, how can we get this where it needs to go so we get the outcome we want? That's every lawyer. Anyone who thinks that's not how lawyers operate, you're out of your mind. That's how they operate. But Bradle and Betterow are different in this regard. Betterow is not a political operator. He's not a fixer. He is not Roy Cohn. He is a legitimate constitutional lawyer. And yeah, him and I don't know. I wouldn't say we mock each other, but like I got on his case the other day because he was talking about my disability. He doesn't know anything about that. He didn't ask about it. That was like rude. I didn't like that. But in terms of my professional regard for him, I'm a law student. He's a lawyer. I think he's a very good constitutional lawyer. He is he's a ruthless tactical operator who plays a form of constitutional chess that reflects sort of his skill level. Okay, that is exactly why he's Mark Betterow. He doesn't do it like in the First Amendment context exclusively like Randazza, so he doesn't have Randazza's kind of like speciality in the First Amendment, but you get Mark Betterow talking about constitutional procedure. Exactly what we've been learning about today is why he's in his wheelhouse. Paradoxically, Bradle isn't as much in his wheelhouse when you're talking about some of this complex federal-like stuff, but that's because it's not, yes, it is binding on the state courts, but it's not every day in Massachusetts you're going to be arguing that. Mostly what you're going to be arguing in Massachusetts District and Superior Court, this is maybe in the appellate court a little bit less, but mostly in the trial courts, you're going to be arguing the SJC's interpretation of these rules, of these amendments. Not to say you're never going to bring up federal cases. You do. You see them in a lot of moving papers. They are controlling, but it's not necessarily as common. Okay, Betterow is someone you bring in because you want to argue everything we just learned about and win. All right, that's why it's so interesting to watch Betterow in action. Now, it's also interesting to contrast Bradle and Betterow with Alan Jackson, David Dinetti, and Robert Alessi and Hank Brennan. Okay, they also have their own styles, okay? And it's interesting to contrast them with Ken Mello and with Robert Cosgrove and with all these different lawyers, okay? Eliza Little. Like, they all have their own styles, but they all function around the orbit or the nuclei of either criminal procedure, which is mostly the state-level prosecutors and criminal defense attorneys, or if they're kind of like these interstate like power players, they're experts in constitutional law, or they're PR experts. So like Yannetti is a corollary to Bradle, but Yannetti I think has more prominence. Bradle's getting there though. Bradle really made his name on this stuff. And then Alan Jackson is kind of a corollary to Betterow, but it's hard to really draw a corollary because Alan Jackson is more like, I'd call him like we're going to talk about government agent. He's got to be connected at every level of the federal government. I'm sorry. Like, he's just like, forget about Charles William Wiley. That dude is like, you want an intel? Alan Jackson. You know, like, he very snappy, on the ball, understands every single social circle he's in. And he's adjacent to Hollywood, bro. Hollywood is the government. Okay, Hollywood is the government. All right, let's all get on the same page. Hollywood is the government. All right, so he's the government. I don't know what the hell part of the government that man is in. I don't know why the government likes working with criminal defendants. I mean, I kind of get it. But Alan Jackson and Mark Betterow are different. Betterow is up there as a constitutional scholar. Alan Jackson's a level above it, and I'm not being paternalistic here, but there's a difference between people who interpret the laws in the Constitution and the various state constitutions, whatever, Declaration of Rights, etc., and the people who write them. So Alan Jackson is more like a politician who could write statutes or reform the Constitution. Very similar to almost me, okay, but that's not what Betterow's doing. Betterow doesn't write statutes. He interprets how courts interpret the constitutional validity of statutes. I write statutes. I'm sorry, I'm not tooting my own horn. I have written words that have made it into statutes in the state in particular. So it's a different exercise and I'll explain this to you the way my mentor explained it to me. She was a high-ranking government official for a long time. And she said, in public at a speech one time, she is the person you come to when you want to find out if the law that you're going to write will pass a constitutional challenge so that your intent doesn't get stripped away by the courts. That's how Alan Jackson could think. I don't think he does policy work, but you have to be a constitutional expert, and you have to understand how the judiciary thinks about the law, and you have to understand about how the different defense and prosecutor bars think about the law, and you have to understand how the federal courts think about the Constitution, and how the state courts think about their constitutions, and where the law could be challenged on constitutional principles for every possible case. You can't assume any facts are going to repeat. You just have to say, under every circumstance, no matter what type of challenge this law could be subject to, will it pass constitutional muster? That's a completely different way of thinking, all right? So, you got three levels of this. Lawyers tend to fall into each bracket, okay? Policymakers, people who do constitutional law, and then I'm not ranking them on a hierarchy. I'm just saying these are the levels of it. And then people who apply state-level criminal procedure through the lens of constitutional interpretation. Each of them works in concert with each other, but they all have specific focus. And that's why Betterow is such a ruthless operator. And my point here was he's not being an overly, he's not using punishment or being a disciplinarian. He's thinking I have an objective. The Constitution and the law related to the Constitution will let me accomplish it as long as you don't do X, Y, or Z. That's how he thinks if he's going to engage with his client. Don't fuck up what I'm trying to accomplish. You don't understand the Constitution. You don't want to say it that way. Maybe you need to beat someone over the head with it from time to time. But you don't have to say it that way to to make your point. And that's why I would imagine for Aiden, Betterow feels like a disciplinarian. He's not. He's just thinking differently, and the implications of a client's actions for someone who's making a constitutional challenge or thinking about appeal or all this other stuff are different than someone who's challenging an indictment under Odell, DiBenedetto, or McCarthy. It's just not the same. You're not thinking about the same behavior. What your client does that could impact the grand jury challenge is completely unrelated to some of the stuff Betterow is going to be doing. They tie in because Fourth Amendment violations inform your ability to get a grand jury indictment thrown out. But it has this whole wider vertical sort of column that doesn't even touch the state level proceeding that deals with the fallout of things like getting Kate Peter classified as a government agent. That's where you're don't fuck that shit up. You don't understand what you're doing. If you're Betterow talking to Kearney. So let's listen to this article and then we'll get ready to take it home.
Individuals. Does the Fourth Amendment apply to private individuals? The Fourth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution protects you against unreasonable searches and seizures. In broad terms, this means that an agent of the government cannot search or seize your property without either first obtaining your consent or a warrant from a judge. Any evidence seized in violation of the Fourth Amendment is inadmissible in court and cannot be used to convict a suspect of a crime. Florida man receives 15-year sentence after landlord's son finds gun in apartment. But what if the police receive evidence seized by a non-government actor? In general, searches by private individuals do not fall under the Fourth Amendment. But there is an exception when that individual acts as an instrument or agent of the government. In other words, if the police direct a non-government actor to conduct a warrantless search of a suspect's property, that would violate the Fourth Amendment. If the private party acted completely on their own accord, however, police and prosecutors could use any evidence found. A recent decision from the U.S. 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, United States v. Perez, provides a helpful illustration of these rules. In this case, prosecutors charged the defendant with violating a federal law that makes it a crime for a convicted felon to possess a firearm. The defendant was a convicted felon. One day, the defendant got into a verbal argument with his landlord's son, a man named Hernandez. During this argument, Hernandez said the defendant flashed a firearm at him. Hernandez subsequently called the police. The police arrested the defendant and conducted a search of the yard outside the residence. When the police could not find the defendant's firearm, they left. Some time later, Hernandez heard the defendant's dog barking out in the yard. Hernandez decided to take the dog back inside the defendant's apartment. While inside the defendant's apartment, Hernandez found the gun. Hernandez informed the police of this discovery. The police then obtained a search warrant and recovered the gun from the defendant's apartment. A jury convicted the defendant of being a felon in possession of a firearm. The judge sentenced the defendant to more than 15 years in prison. On appeal, the defendant raised a number of issues, including his objection to Hernandez's actions in finding the gun, which was obviously the key piece of evidence introduced at trial. The 11th Circuit upheld the defendant's conviction. The appellate court said Hernandez was not acting as an agent of the government when he entered the defendant's apartment. Critically, there was no evidence that the police ever instructed or encouraged Hernandez to search the apartment. As noted above, Hernandez only went inside to tie up the defendant's dog who had been left out in the yard. Given that the police had no knowledge of the search, there was therefore no Fourth Amendment violation.
Okay, so you
Contact Florida Criminal Defense.
The way this really plays out, more so than anything else, is whether the police, they really look at whether they told the person to do something. That's what knowledge is a step, but it's really whether they told them to do something. All right, so let's read this post. Let's bring it home. And yes, Bossy Texas Chick, that's the Second Amendment. First Amendment, right to free speech, right to assembly, right of the press, right to free exercise of religion. Second Amendment, right to bear arms. Third Amendment, no quartering of soldiers in time of peace or unless in time of war by some special act. Fourth Amendment, no search warrant shall issue, but in the case of reasonable search and seizures shall only happen with a warrant specifying time, place, and manner to be searched, unless an exception applies, but that's not in the amendment. Fifth Amendment is right against self-incrimination. Miranda derives from the Fifth Amendment. And then I don't know if your jury trial right is in Fifth Amendment. It might be Sixth Amendment. Sixth Amendment is jury trial right, and then it also covers your right to confront your accuser. Seventh Amendment is right to a trial by jury in matters over $20. Eighth Amendment is right against cruel and unusual punishment. Ninth Amendment is... Ooh, this is a tough one. Ninth Amendment is the enumeration of the rights not in the Constitution to the states. 10th Amendment functions in a very similar way. I think it has to do with the way constitutional amendments function as well. I might be mixing up the 9th and 10th Amendment. Then once we get to the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, I don't know 11 or 12 off the top of my head. 13 is the Slavery Amendment, no slavery unless you're in prison for a crime. 14th is due process, procedural substantive. 15th is the Civil Rights Amendment, so it might relate to voting in the southern states. The 16th Amendment, I don't know off the top of my head. 17th Amendment, don't know off the top of my head. 18th Amendment, I think, is prohibition. 19th Amendment is women's right to vote. 20th Amendment is the repeal of prohibition, although that might actually be 19, 20, and 21. And then I don't know 22, 23, 24. 25 is presidential term limits, or, along with like a clause to remove the president for incapacity. And 26th is the Madison Amendment, or no, that's not 26. 26, I don't know, and 27 is the Madison Amendment, which has to do with congressional pay. So there you go. I did as many as I could. I know almost all of the amendments. All that in witness, and you get called to testify, and all you did was like tell the police about what you saw on the night you were like a witness to something. That's not a government agent. If you start like doing surveillance of like Aidan Kearney for Brian Tully or something like that, oh yeah, then you're not a witness anymore. Like, you've turned from a fact witness to a government agent. You're part of the prosecution. It's really like whether you're telling them stuff about something you saw unrelated to them prompting you, as the cases we reviewed, and I'm not a lawyer, this is not legal advice. The distinction is you telling them something you saw, especially if you didn't have any interaction with them before you went and saw this or like got this information, versus you proactively going out because they want you to get information and providing it. One of them is just you're a fact witness. The other is you are a part of the prosecution. You are a government agent who was solicited to go out and do something. It's not a witness. Then you have Fourth Amendment implications. But even still, it depends on what you did. What did you do? Did you collect evidence? Did you give the evidence to a police officer? Did the officer give it to a grand jury? Did you delete the evidence? Did you collect, like, every piece of evidence you collect has to be analyzed. Did you do it in that specific instance because the police officer told you to? Did the police officer acquiesce to you doing it? Did you do it for a primarily or even like tangentially related law enforcement purpose, or were you just doing it? Like every piece of evidence is subject to that fact-specific analysis. It's why it puts all of these people in such a dangerous situation, because every single aspect of the person's conduct, if they're not a witness, if they're just doing things for the police, okay, that subjects it to this analysis, and they want the discovery. They just want to learn what these people were doing so they can make their arguments and show people what was going on. So that's the big deal. All right, now let's read this post and take us home. Yep, waking up and seeing Jen McCabe trending on X was not on my bingo card. I'm starting to wonder if Michael Proctor... Actually, I want to hear Google read this out. I'm tired. Will it actually do it? I think it might.
Conversation. Yep, waking up and seeing Jen McCabe trending on X was not on my bingo card. I'm starting to wonder if Michael Proctor, Brian Tully, Jen, Kate Peter, the Norfolk the, Sean Good, Huey Buchanan and Marty Kraft may all be impacted by the fallout from Proctor's Cellphone-Gate. 20 tough towel thoughts that truly torment these turbulent times. 1. Who on Proctor's unit knew about Tully leaking? Unredacted phone extraction, after only messages from Tully to Lindsay and from Kate to Lindsay were removed, in April of 2024, and does the leak of that phone related to Jen McCabe telling Lindsay, in December of 2023, that Lindsay needed to be sorry for her involvement with Aidan Turtleboy Kearney in the fall of that year? Source. 2. Who on that MSP unit knew that Kate Peter and Jen McCabe both had direct lines of communication to Brian Tully and the Norfolk the? Source. 3. Who, along with Kate, worked for Marty Kraft's PI firm in the context of the investigations of Karen Reed and Aidan Kearney by Tully's unit in 2023 and 2024. Source. 4. Did Brian Tully hire Marty Kraft, as early as 2021, to keep certain witnesses quiet in the context of the Sandra Birchmore cover-up? 5. Who was the father of Sandra Birchmore's unborn child, and was that person a police officer who conspired, by lying to Farewell as to Farewell being the father of that child, to kill Sandra? 6. Why did John Fanning write a report exonerating Matthew Farewell for Sandra's death, despite Fanning, and Huey Buchanan, working in Stoughton, where Farewell was a police officer, before Fanning and Huey went to work for the Norfolk the MSP unit, and despite a litany of evidence collected by the Canton PD, in just 48 hours, proving that Farewell killed Sandra and that Farewell had been abusing Sandra since she was a child? More information. 7. Why did two members of the Canton Police, including former Chief Ken Berkowitz, may he rest in peace, blow the whistle on an alleged cover-up of Sandra's murder by cops in Stutton and by the troopers on Tully's MSP unit. More. 8. Why did one high-ranking member of the Canton Police put in writing, to the Norfolk This office, that Tully's MSP unit was covering up Sandra Birchmore's murder by way of John Fanning's report exonerating Farewell? 9. What, exactly, did the federal government find on that 12-year extraction of Proctor's phone, and why did Proctor lie about the existence of those records until as late as August of 2025? More. 10. How many other cases investigated by Tully's MSP unit were compromised, on the grounds of procedural due process, including ex post facto review, de novo, of those cases? More. 11. Why is it so hard for people to understand that someone's guilt or innocence has nothing to do with the penalty for procedural due process violations by prosecutors or police investigators? More. 12. Why, exactly, did Brian Tully and the Norfolk the recruit Marty Croft to hire Kate Peter, and Kate's strange group of Discord cultists, to weaponize the criminal justice system in this state for purposes that remain unclear, but, at this time, appear to relate to an effort to pressure Aidan Kearney to flip on Karen Reed and, simultaneously, an effort by Tully and Kate to shift public attention away from Jen McCabe and onto Lindsay Gaetani by any means necessary? More. 13. Why did Jason Haley Broyles first show up under his real name in the fall of 2023 to buy a free Karen Red billboard, only to then vanish for months and return in the winter/spring of 2024 to target Lindsay Gaetani in a way that allowed Broyles to get close to Turtle Boy's inner circle, and was Broyles, who had been on Kate's Discord since 2019, doing so to feed intel back to Kate? 14. Likewise, why did Jason Broyles appear as Haley just weeks after another fake account, the Jennings Report, run by a former Catholic priest named Mark Murphy, that was targeting Lindsay in the same way, and also to Kate's benefit, suddenly vanish after being exposed as tied to Murphy? More. 15. Why, exactly, was Lindsay assigned a victim's advocate named Pam Friedman who has known Brian Tully for over 20 years and was Pam a handler? 16. Why do the McCabes and Alberts, along with Michael Proctor and Kate Peter, have strange connections to Towel Mom that have resulted in this little towel being tormented simply for asking these questions? 17. Is the special prosecutor appointment process in Massachusetts broken, and did the Norfolk use Kraft's spy firm, and Brian Tully, to coordinate the investigations of Karen Reed and Aidan Kearney post-October 2023, despite this recusal on the Kearney matters? More. 18. Why has the Norfolk twice in recent months, attempted to sign a plea deal with Kate Peter, as to felony charges Kate picked up due to driving out of her way to flip off a woman who has an order on Kate, while that person was outside of a courthouse in Dedham, while having an aider tell the judge in Kate's case that no conflict of interest exists between Kate and the Norfolk despite evidence now being made public confirming Kate had this personal cell phone number? More. 19. Who wiretaped the FBI while the feds were investigating Tully's unit related to the Birchmore cover-up, and other civil rights violations? More. 20. When the dust settles, and all of the chips, no pun intended, are on the table, will folks across the various camps in this sordid Dickensian drama be able to see through the polemics, find kernels of truth, help to reform this broken system in good faith, center the voices of the vulnerable and unheard, hold accountable the predators who cast shadows on the wall to hide this from the public, and, fundamentally, do so without fear, favoritism or apology? This little towel knows it's possible, and I won't give up the good fight because, in my heart, I believe in this country. I believe in this form of government. I hate the damn commies, and I think we can all rise to meet this moment. Video transcript. Alright, so you see this unit, okay, they're all working for Norfolk Michael Morrissey. It's called the KPIC unit.
Right.
They get the information about Sandra Birchmore's.
We're going to take us home with this actual video. Alright, I want to watch this actual video. 1 second. Did you like my, my 20, what did I call it? 20 tough towel thoughts that truly torment these turbulent times. That's called alliteration, folks. Alright, let's listen to this video, then I'm going to towel class. I hope we all had a good day. I had a fun morning with you all. I'm sorry we can't spend more time together. But we're going to take us home with this video, then I'll say bye. 5-minute video. Let's do it. this unit, okay? They're all working for Michael Morrissey. It's called the CPAC unit. They get the information from the Kansas police on February 6th, everything I just said. Then they somehow exonerate Farwell. They say Sandra's death was the result of self-harm, somehow, some way, which leads, in my opinion, according to what I understand, Ken Berkowitz, the former chief, now deceased, may he rest in peace, of the Kansas police, to go to the feds sometime before May of 2022 and say, what the hell happened here? My guys got this guy, Matt Farwell, and this MSP unit and these Stoughton cops, whatever, it didn't get investigated properly. You think maybe that's what started up the May 2022 public corruption grand jury into Michael Morrissey? You think maybe that's why Michael Morrissey, Brian Tully, and these guys have been targets of the feds the entire time? Wasn't Karen Reed and John O'Keefe. It was Sandra Birchmore. And let's be very, 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 very clear about this. I have good reason to believe, people should do some FOIAs, that a high-ranking person in the Canton Police Department, whose name and rank shall be withheld by this little towel, put in writing to Michael Morrissey that the investigation of Sandra Birchmore's death was a cover-up. I'm talking 2022 or 2021. This person, who's still with the Canton Police, put in writing to Michael Morrissey that this happened. And in August of 2024, when the feds investigated and indicted Matthew Farwell after a years-long investigation that we know of, a year long, it was probably longer, Brian Tully and John Fanning were sent an email by Michael Morrissey saying, is this true, as to Farwell's indictment by the feds? And Brian Tully, in December of 2023, before he leaked Lindsay Gattani's unredacted phone extraction, was asking, under the color of law, under his official position as a state police officer, who the target of the federal investigation was. Folks, these are procedural due process violations. Through and through, every example, over and over and over. It was done to help Jen McCabe get a distraction, in my opinion, by getting Lindsay to be the target of public ire. It was done for the purposes of putting pressure on Aidan Kearney with Lindsay as an unwitting honeypot so Aidan would flip on Karen. It was done for the purposes of insulating Tully's unit and the Norfolk DA from exposure as to what they had done in the Sandra Birchmore case, and God knows what else is on Michael Proctor's phone, because the public attention brought down on that unit by the Karen Reed and John O'Keefe case would inevitably lead to people who asked questions finding this information, and that's exactly what happened. I put it all together. I am a little towel. I will not let the vulnerable and non-politically connected be forsaken by a system, at least in Norfolk County, that seemed intent on putting the interests of certain people above the pursuit of justice. We will reform the special prosecutor process. We will center the voices of the unheard, as this story is committed to history's ever-drying pages and the ink thereupon. And it will be not just a forsaken Dickensian drama. This will be a Dickensian drama told in stone, authentically, with due regard for those who were the most harmed, such as to make sure it never happens again. That is the only remedy. The panacea to this kind of misconduct is institutional reform. And that's exactly what's going to happen. No trivia. I have a lot to say today. I'm so sorry we can't play trivia. We're going to talk about Kate Peter. We're going to talk about Brian Tully. We're going to talk about John Fanning. We're going to talk about Michael Proctor's cell phone. And there's nothing in the world that is going to prevent us from doing that, because it is time for a reckoning. The people who were more loyal to Michael Proctor and Jen McCabe and any of those family members and Brian Tully or Yuri or whatever than they were to the pursuit of justice, it's time for your moral reckoning. You will be forced, while the rest of us stand here and process this from a moral perspective, you will be the ones looking in the mirror and being forced to confront what you covered up. You know what they did. And a lot of you, for personal reasons, political reasons, self-interest, money, I don't care. We're just like, who cares? They're trying to get Karen Reed. Who cares? Oh, they offered money. Who cares? Oh, I'm in trouble. I guess, they can help me. Who cares? That's what you all did. Some of you, not you in the chat. That's why I'm frustrated, because this was pernicious, insidious, invidious, and it only was able to manifest itself in this group of troopers because a lot of us just were willing to say nothing. The only reason that bad things happen is because good people say nothing. And the only reason that anything positive has ever happened in the history of mankind is because a few good people said something. Love it. Little towel, just ranting. And I'll leave you with my favorite quote. Whenever we stand against the flow of opinion on hotly contested issues, a man, a woman, and a towel do what they must, in spite of the personal consequences and dangers and pressures, for that is the basis of all human morality. My name is Grant Smith-Ellis. I got to go to towel class. Thank you so much for being with me on this morning's stream. Very interesting developments indeed. You want to support this stream? Feel free to subscribe. Drop a like. Let's see if I have more memberships to give out. How did our poll end? Did Brian Tully and John Fanning's MSP unit cover up Sandra Birchmore's murder? 86% of you say yep, 100%. 13% of you say nope, say Tully. Very interesting poll. Let's see. So we'll find out. Can I gift memberships yet? Hey, all right, we're going to do, as a reward for you staying to the very end, 5 gift memberships are being sent out. Yes, we have a special unprompted reward coming to the people who made it to the end. Congratulations. Oh, who's going to get the memberships? Oh, congratulations, Diana and Shannon and Monica and Michael and Valentine. Thank you so much for watching till the end. Appreciate all of you who were in the chat today. I was so glad to be able to give out 5 of those memberships. I'll save 5 of them for another surprise membership parade during this month at some point. And if you did just get memberships, did you know you can now use Super Towel emojis in the chat? But yep, feel free to subscribe. You can like the channel, like the content while it's live. That helps the channel if you want to let folks know. There's other ways to donate. There's a Venmo at Grant E1. There's a Cash App Grant Smith Ellis, and there's also a PayPal. If you've never watched this stream before, there's no real sponsors. There's no ads. It's independent journalism. It's kind of like PBS. Every once, like a couple hours, you'll hear me say, here's how you can support. I'll drop my links in the chat. I got to go to towel class. You want to buy me lunch today or something? God bless each and every one of you who kept me alive. When I get in a negative headspace, can't always do my work. When I'm feeling better, I can do these fun streams with you. So, start of the month, let's all try to help each other where we're able to do so, and God bless you so much. As I mentioned, this is a public information service. It's designed to engender, coach, and public discourse, such as to educate, inform, and entertain the wider public and ward off the usurpation of our representative forms of government worldwide. Towel loves you very much, and I'll tell you, no matter what, however you pay it forward today, if you learned something, if you liked the Fourth Amendment stuff, if you want to be a force for good in the world, there's a way you can pay it forward. Thank you so much. God bless you, Jim. Look for reasons to do small acts of service and kindness today, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, you could do something like donate to our homeless veterans. Have you realized that times are tough, and there are some people out there who are homeless, and they are veterans, and it is against their will. They want to go live in the woods. We're not going to stop them. But there should not be one veteran in the United States of America who is homeless against their will, and if that is the case, we have failed. So if you want to donate to homeless veterans today, that's a noble and honorable cause. You might also consider donating to animal shelters run by veterans. Everyone loves animals. You can also help veterans. Good idea. Maybe you also want to donate to an animal shelter in general. Everybody loves animals. Maybe, however, it's something as small as waving to someone on the street, saying hello to a friend or family member you haven't talked to in a while, or even, ladies and gentlemen, donating 200 tomato plants like Francis Futrell did that one time and having them designated honorary towels forevermore. Yes, in that way, I think we can live up to our towel eudaimonia or summum bonum, our greatest good in the ancient Greek or the Latin respectively, and in that way change the current realpolitik from one centered on preserving, expanding, and demonstrating our power, money, and resources to one centered on preserving, expanding, and demonstrating our capacity to engage in small acts of service rooted in unconditional love. Yes, I believe it's possible because of you all, and those ripples of goodness and kindness will slowly spread, such as to bring about a new digital epoch defined by Aquarius the water bearer standing tall and carrying a towel. See how fluid that was? I have the voice of an angel. My name is Grant Smith Ellis. God bless you all very much. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. I got to go to towel class. Until we see each other again, be well, be safe. Towel loves you all very dearly, and I can't wait to see you again soon. Got to end the Towel X and the Towel YouTube at the same time because I got to go. Can't be late to towel class. All right, be well. Thanks for being with me today, friends. Means a lot to me. Towel friends on the YouTube. I gave you a few seconds extra without telling the towel friends on the X. We're being sneaky. All right, I got to go to class. Towel loves you very much. Thank you all so much for being with me today. It means a lot. I'm going to go fight the monsters in the world. I'm going to fight for good. I'm not going to give up hope. Nothing will stop me, and I hope you'll take some of that energy out in the world with you today as well. My name's Grant Smith Ellis. I'm a towel.